Date is November 8, 2022. You're at the Abington Conservation Commission meeting. We're gonna bump up 2 items on the agenda for the Zoom portion of the meeting. The first item will be request for certificate of compliance SE 084531, located at 200 Myers Ave and 0 Walnut Street. This is all part of the Myers Ave notice of intent that's coming up next. We did the site walk out there 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We looked and saw what they had done, part of the 2018 order of conditions. Tara, do you want to just speak on what was done under that order?
Sure. Thank you very much. Tara McMaster, Weston & Sampson, Project Manager and Senior Associate. We basically did a pumping test on the well, and that was predominantly the only work that was completed at the time. We put up the erosion control measures and made sure that went well. We actually tested the water and then determined that we need to do some additional treatment. The project pretty much went on hold for a couple of years, and we had to design a PFAS building, and that's why we came back to kind of close out the master certificate of compliance and move on to the new project.
Anybody from the board have any questions?
No. And I think they had all their paperwork in
Yeah.
correctly for the
Yep.
certificate, so I think we're in good shape.
Yeah.
Anybody in the audience? Bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? You want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant a certificate of compliance for SC 084531 for the project located at 200 Myers Avenue and 0 Walnut Street.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, next up is notice of intent, SE 084-0561, filed by Kristen Cameron, located at 200 Myers Ave, 0 Walnut Street. You again, Tara.
All right, great. So basically, we have the same exact design from the last project, and the only addition is a new building for PFAS treatment located adjacent to the existing treatment plant. As you indicated, we did do a site walk a couple weeks ago now, and we made some modifications to the plans. It indicated the 200-foot front area, which is now shown on the plans, also which is outside the project work area. But I think everything's in order. We sent over the plans overnight. I think we should have everything in hand. And the last meeting, I think that was the only thing that was a condition.
Anybody have any questions?
Did anybody get that updated plan?
I haven't seen it. Tony's been out.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Can Jerry,
Can you share your screen?
Yeah, if you can.
Okay.
Debbie, do you have that up, or do you want me to share it?
I can get it up if you give me one moment, because it just crashed.
Of course.
All right, come up now. Sorry, bear with me just a
It's
moment.
all right.
Large files, just give me a second. Oh, there we go. Share my screen. All right. If someone could just let me know if you're able to see, that would be much appreciated.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so just here, we've indicated the approximate mean annual high water line, then the 100 and the 200. And the limit of work is over here.
Can't see where she's pointing to. So the one in the farthest corner is the mean high water line?
You are correct. The mean annual high water and then the offset from those two for the 100 foot riverfront and 200 foot riverfront.
Okay, good. That's good.
And Tara, when did you submit those plans to Tony? Today? Did you say?
I think, go ahead, Devin.
The digital went into Tony yesterday, I
Okay.
believe, and the physical plans were overnighted, so they arrived this morning.
Okay.
But we'd be happy to have it as a condition if you're concerned about seeing them ahead of time.
All right. Anyone have any other questions?
No.
Anybody in the audience? Bring it back to the board. You want to make a motion?
I don't have the SC number.
I don't either.
Oh, it's
084.
0840561.
561, yeah.
Go make the
I'm
motion.
staring at you.
I'll make a motion for SC 084-561. What's it called? Is it still the 200 Miles Ave?
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion for SC 084-561, located at 200 Miles Ave and 0 Walnut Street.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is on the plan. Looks like it's that Cassie.
All right.
Need a number?
Next up, discussion on 402 Groveland Street, order of conditions. Yep, also that, thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of the commission. Sean Riley, 500 Washington Street, here representing the owner of 402 Groveland Street, which is Abington Investments LLC. This is that single-family house that had the driveway that crossed through the wetlands. The order of conditions was approved back in September. I wasn't present at that meeting, but the engineer and the owner were present at the time. Subsequent to that meeting, the order of conditions was printed up and issued to me for recording. And as I typically do, I looked it over to make sure, I'm always making sure like the name of the owner is listed in the book and page of the deed, because those are the things the registry deed's looking for. And when I started looking at what was given to me, there was some information that was missing. So I was talking to Tony about kind of filling out the form correctly, and that got me to start reading the attached conditions, the general conditions, special conditions. As I think the board's aware, the standard form, WPA Form 5, order conditions, has basically 20 pre-printed conditions, and this commission, like any other commission, typically adds attached conditions to the standard form. And in reading the conditions, and again, I wasn't present at the September 12th meeting, but I looked at some of the conditions, and some of the conditions either were in conflict with what our plans were, or things that I think just couldn't work. So I got back to Tony saying we need to tweak some of these, either delete some, reword some. You had added 62 or 63 conditions to the 20. There's also the typical reference that you have in the order conditions, including A1 to A6, B1, but I don't believe that was attached to the order that I received. I know what they are. I asked Tony to give me a copy of those, so I know what they are. But the additional 63 were the ones that I read over, and then I wrote a letter to your commission dated October 25th, highlighting the conditions that I was asking for you to review, and I guess that's what we're doing tonight, to review, to ask that you either delete things because we can't possibly comply with them, or that dates have passed, or words that need to be revised, both for the conditions that we want to keep, or you want to keep, to reword it so it's more effective and easier to interpret, and then thus enforce if need be. But also, I don't want to put the homeowner or the landowner in an immediate situation where they're either, if not immediately in violation of a condition, but they can't possibly satisfy a condition the way it's written. I believe, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, that Tony, your administrative assistant, filed the order condition as it was drafted with DEP. So I believe the procedure would be, if we do agree to make some amendments to the conditions, this would actually be a vote to issue an amended order of conditions. And I would, of course, record that at the Registry of Deeds in order for it to take effect. So I don't know how you want to do it, Mr. Chairman, if you just want to go through my letter or however.
Yeah, you want to just go
Can
item...
I stop for just a second?
Sure.
Do we have copies of it? I didn't get a copy.
We handed them out...
Dropped off.
I wasn't at the last
Yeah.
meeting, so,
Do you want mine?
They were in the packets, too.
well, don't you have,
I
you need
dropped
it too?
off, I think, 10 copies of it.
Yeah, they were in the packets.
No, they weren't.
Well, you can have my copy then.
I'll go, do you have a copy?
Yeah.
Here, I'll go make a copy. So,
No, I have the other one, too.
I had one from the
I have
last
one
meeting.
from the
Did you
last-
have one?
I got one in my packet, yeah.
Sean's letter.
Oh, okay.
It should be in the front. Or, nope, take this one. This one.
Yeah.
My
No,
letter's-
I have both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got both in the
I just have
packet.
the one.
Mine's a 6-page letter dated October 25th.
Right.
Right? Okay. So, I'm sorry, Kathy, you haven't read it yet? You haven't seen
I
it?
read this because somebody sent it to me electronically. I
Okay.
just didn't have a paper copy, and I didn't have the conditions.
Got it, okay. So, my letter starts with reviewing what we'll call the 63 conditions, the attachment to the form, and just to go right to it. So, number 2 of the conditions says that a sworn statement signed under penalties of perjury by the applicant, owner of the property, is responsible for construction of the project, that such individuals understand the terms of the condition, that they will comply with the provisions of the Wetlands Protection Bylaw and this order, and that sworn statement signed under perjury will be provided to the Conservation Commission prior to commencement of any activity. My only comment was, I'm not only, some things I'm addressing specifically for this parcel, but I'm also looking at if these are going to be kind of standard pre-written conditions, just my suggestions moving forward, to require, like, it's not always a commercial large project coming for you. Sometimes it's someone putting a bedroom addition on, putting a pool in, but they trigger wetlands protection issues. So I was just asking, is a sworn statement signed under the pains and penalties of perjury really necessary? It's one more thing that Tony has to collect. It's, if you forget to file it, it's a violation. Because my letter just says, the entire purpose of 1, holding a public hearing, number 2, issuing a written order of conditions, number 3, recording the order at the registry, number 4, requiring that a copy be kept in the contractor's file, number 5, doing a civic compliance. Do we also need them to sign a letter saying, I understand? That's just a point. I think it's a little bit superfluous, and it might save you and Tony and the homeowner issues. Now, they may be a specific type, maybe a larger project or a very, controversial project where you want to include that, but I just question the need to do it on every single one.
I will say that this project is more complicated than typical of what we see in a house. And actually, we have probably more wetlands disturbance, and, we've got like 4,900 square feet of disturbance, I think. And we also have land subject to flooding that we're replicating under compensatory storage. And we're putting a pretty long roadway, or driveway, I should say, in. So I think this is more complicated than typical. I just wanted to make that clear to you.
Oh,
And you would agree with me, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But, so some of these conditions, I think, are appropriate based on the nature of this particular project. A pool in the backyard is different. But I still like this. This is something that I believe came out of either the DEP guidance or actually from MAC, one of the two. Because I think it was MAC. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
it's-
Dr. Mullen has.
I just don't know what the
written these up.
benefit or the gain is. For someone who, let's talk about this project in particular. The homeowner hired an attorney, hired a engineer, had 2 meetings with you guys, public hearings, engineered plans, everything's done. And now you're saying, oh, I want you to sign a letter saying you'll agree and you understand what we already approved. I mean, we will certainly do that. I thought it was superfluous, but this was just as common. I just didn't want to overlook it. I put it in there. It's not a big deal. But I just want to mention, it just seems like, okay, do you need it? Do you want it? Okay. Shall I move on? You want to, I don't know how you want to do this. You want to take discussion on each one?
Yeah, I think we should, that way.
Yeah.
Then we can just approve the whole thing, however we agree on every item.
And I have to say, I agree with Kathy in that respect, because when we looked at MAC and we attended some of the classes for writing an effective order of conditions, I mean, they said to spell things out very specifically. So if it may seem redundant, and I think that's what you said here, it's just additional assurance to us, and that's how I looked at it.
I don't know what it, with all due respect, I understand what you're saying. What does it get you? If they violate the order conditions, they violated their sworn statement, they violated their plans, you don't need a sworn statement because the order conditions already services what you're trying to get to. You must comply with the order conditions. But again, maybe it's semantics, maybe it's policy, it's procedure, but it's one more thing that's going to be collected to your file. And, I mean, again, minimal, but a sworn statement under pains of penalty of perjury is not something that a general homeowner can write up. They're going to have to usually have an attorney draft it and get it notarized. Just, again, is it overkill or is it necessary? You guys make the decision.
Does anybody else have any other comments on that? I know I missed half of it, but...
Oh, no, we're on the first item.
Yeah, I know, half of the first part of the discussion on that, but... seems like he's asking us to figure this out.
Well, I'm looking
I
for...
personally don't think that we should make things harder for our citizens, but I also am the new guy here. So I fully respect what you guys just said, but are we making it too difficult? I don't know.
Again, we're just following the guidelines that we have picked up, and when you attend the classes,
Correct.
I mean, they say to be very specific, and it doesn't hurt to put everything out there in writing.
And-
So there is no...
But the order of conditions doesn't satisfy that.
I mean, I've done projects a lot more difficult than this, and I've never had to sign anything. I mean, is that coming from DEP or is that coming from MACC?
It's MACC.
So it's not, that's what their recommendation. It's not something that we have to do.
Can this be on a per-project basis that we decide this? Like,
Everything's on a per-project
Okay.
basis, yeah. But, you
Yeah, I
know...
mean, yeah,
do
if they
you
don't
feel
follow,
For this particular project...
if they don't
that
follow the order of conditions, we're gonna slap them with an enforcement order.
Right.
I mean, it's, the steps are there if they don't follow the order of conditions. Right, same thing, I think,
I want to avoid redundancy.
to have a, like Sean was saying, to have somebody come in that's doing an addition, and we're gonna tell them they have to hire a lawyer. I know
But we take
this
it on a-
applicant did.
But we take it on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
What applies to some doesn't always apply
Right.
to others. I think because of the case, in this situation, this property is not your normal property. You know,
And we've also just recently seen projects move from the applicant and been sold 3 times in the last year, or 2 times, and so...
nothing was done,
So,
In this case, the project is not someone who's going to, the property owner is going to build. They're trying to sell it to somebody else who will make the decision about whether they're going to build. So there can be a lot of stuff that could get lost during that transfer of the paperwork. And that's the concern is...
But what would get lost in this case?
we just had that happen in another situation, Dan. A property was sold twice.
But we shouldn't assume that that's going to happen.
This doesn't speak,
But we don't want to get off subject, okay? But,
Understood,
I mean, I
understood.
just...
this number 2 doesn't speak to a transfer of the property. It just says the owner and the person responsible for construction will sign the penalty, the sworn statement. Again, this is not a big issue, but it just seems like, what are you getting out of it? If I violate the order of conditions, or is there a circumstance where I violate my sworn statement but not the order of conditions? Like, it's not getting you anything else. This is the order. This spells out, you must build to the plan, what you must do. A signed statement says, I agree, is unnecessary. I just think it's superfluous. And then now it's one more thing to submit to Tony, one more thing to put in a file, and if someone overlooks it, then what do you do? It's just,
Well, I went through a very similar situation a year and a half ago when I bought my home here, and you guys were very on top of our scenario, and we received the same paperwork from conservation and other departments when we bought the house. So I think the system is working, so I just don't want to make it harder, but that's where I'll stop.
There's a number of people who don't read all the conditions, and not just in conservation, but you guys have probably all heard of the green M&M thing that Van Halen would do. Everyone always thought, oh, they're a bunch of divas, but what it was is people, when they would go to concerts, the arenas weren't reading their order of conditions. And they'd show up for a concert and, you know, things wouldn't be right. So they put in one that said, we need to have all green M&Ms in our room.
To see if they were.
To see, are you reading it completely? And that's the concern that I would have, is someone comes on the site, have they actually read everything? Are they following everything appropriately?
I tend to some of those lists sometimes, so we can't always assume that they're not going to read them. That's people's jobs, right? So,
at a minimum, I could even offer you a compromise. Don't make it a sworn statement under the pains and penalties of perjury. Just make it a statement, a written statement. I mean, again, I don't know what it's getting, because they're coming to your hearing and you're telling them what to do and you're giving them a written order that gets recorded against their property. But if you want a letter that you think gives you some extra level of protection, so be it. But it doesn't need to be a sworn statement on the pains and penalty of perjury. That's someone throwing that in there because it sounds good, but in practice, it gives you nothing.
I would prefer to keep it. That's my opinion. Again, people have sold property, you go to a closing, you pass papers, sign here, sign here, sign here. I don't know how many other people, other than if you have your attorney present that goes through and reads everything. I think that, to me, it's just, it was there, it was something we talked about before. We have instituted this with other plans that were very complicated. That's my opinion.
And if you feel strongly about that, I would say, take out the pains and penalty of perjury, because pains and penalty of perjury means, I swear to God I'm not lying, okay? And what you're asking them to do is say that they agree to comply with the order in the wetlands protection bylaws. A written statement will do that for you. It doesn't have to be, go to a notary public, get someone drafted, because it's pains and penalty of perjury is different language. Maybe this is the inner attorney of me speaking. It's just a hullabaloo about nothing. If you want a written statement from the person, fine and dandy. Maybe that's what's bothering me, is the pains and penalty of perjury and blah, blah, blah. A letter signed by the person that you just issued the order saying, I agree to abide by the order, if that's what you'd like, we'll do what you want, whatever level you want, but moving forward, other people will probably overlook it or not know what pains and penalty of perjury are.
It's also the person responsible for construction, which may be different, and that's probably more of my concern on this one, too.
Right, so both of them have to go get something notarized and something drawn up, the way it's written.
But it's the contractor, because we've probably actually seen the applicant, but, you know, the contractor makes me a little nervous a lot of times.
I mean, and that's interesting. Person responsible for the construction of the project.
What does that mean?
Is that the homeowner, or is it the contractor that they hired? I would say it's the homeowner, because they're responsible.
Who hired the contractor?
Right.
Mhm.
It's the homeowner,
the general,
right?
They're the
Or
general.
the property owner, or the developer.
Right, it says this asks for a statement from the applicant, the owner of the property, and the person responsible for construction. Those three people, which sometimes may be two, sometimes maybe one. Okay, I mean, again, this is the first thing on my list. I didn't think this would be that much of a discussion, but you're asking for 3 sworn statements notarized, all saying we agree to abide by the order that you guys just issued. Okay, great. Again, it seems
On the surface.
I don't mean to be
me,
fresh,
that
but it's
seems-
not
it
worth the
seems
paper it's printed
too
on.
much, but That's just my opinion.
I've never done it. I've never had to sign anything.
I mean, I might be like, open to talking, but can we change the language and any of the other things that these people are signing to just avoid the repetition? I don't,
There are a lot of good conditions here. Don't get me wrong, I'm not here to go through 63 of them and tell you that these are hogwash. No, there are a lot of good conditions. There's a couple that I've mentioned in my letter, and this was just the first on the list. It's not the most important one, it's just the first one. It was number 2. Number 2 in the letter, number 1st on my list.
Do you want to put this one on pause and move on, just because we seem to be at an impasse?
Right, and this wasn't,
Come back to it at the end and maybe move through the rest, just so that
Sure.
maybe our brains will,
And I apologize
Process
to
it.
people. I mean, before I go further, I don't know what they're here for, but I hate to keep people here and watch me take up their time. If it's
Well,
up
you
the
want to
board.
continue this for 15 minutes?
Yeah, I'll be glad to step aside and take care of these
Okay.
fine young people. I don't know why you're here, but maybe it's something that they can take care of quickly.
yeah, I think so.
And it just, if that's all right with you guys?
yeah, that'd be great, thank you. Sure.
You want to make someone to make a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue the discussion on 402 Groveland Street for 15-ish
To-
minutes from now.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, next up is request for determination located at 284 Oak Street. Let me just get up to the podium and your name and address, please.
Good evening, everyone. So that's my wife, Carol. I'm Denny, and good night to all yours. We're very excited.
State your
to be
address
here.
too, please.
284 Oak Street.
Thank you.
And go ahead.
Yep, we're doing an addition, a garage addition, and we're in the buffer, behind the buffer zone. So we're just hoping to get this, looked at and, hopefully, approved. And I don't know if you have any questions for us.
Oh, well, this is the site that a couple of us were
I know,
on the walks there, so I think we can
Last
speak to that.
last Thursday, Alex, Tim, and I did a site walk, and Friday, there was another one set up. Who went to that
I
one?
did.
Anybody else go?
No, I don't think so.
I was
Okay.
in New Hampshire, I apologize.
Okay.
Okay.
So, could you tell us a little about the site walk and what you saw, Dan?
Sure, so as you come down their driveway, they're looking to put a sizable garage addition in the back.
Is it just a
there.
garage that's being added in, or are you
I
doing
haven't seen,
in-laws?
I haven't seen the
or-
plans.
I don't
We
really know.
haven't seen the plans, particularly when we talked about it, it was a garage. There probably is something about it that could be referred to his plans when we received them. But basically, there's a large fence in their yard that crosses the backyard. They're trying to build an addition that would go roughly, I think, like 10 to 12 feet from the fence. It's 20-ish, 25 feet from their existing property now. So when you walk on the site, you see where they marked the orange lines for where the property will stop. So basically, that part is within inside the buffer. But we
How
walked
far
from,
inside the buffer was it?
I don't know particularly where the buffer is on that property.
What do we figure on, 70 feet?
It goes to the fence,
65,
right?
65, 70 feet was probably the closest
Yeah.
spot.
65, 70, okay.
It's 65 from the buffer, from the edge of the resource area.
Yes.
Okay. 65, 75.
And that's really where the fence ends, right? At the back corner? I looked at it.
No, no,
on that-
it's beyond the
that's
fence.
back. Yeah, beyond the fence.
Yeah.
But it's, everything else is grass, where they're putting it is grass, and it's 65 feet
Correct,
beyond the
correct,
fence. Okay,
yeah.
that corner back there.
Okay. So how close is the addition going to?
So we're saying that's the 65 or 70 feet,
65,
yeah.
Okay. I'm
That's at
trying
the
to find
close-
my plan right now.
That's at the closest. I don't think it shows on the plan.
Oh, all right.
Oh, yeah, oh, you got
this-
that one. Oh, yeah.
And then it just shoots
Oh, I-
way back
I
after that.
I just found it.
Yeah.
This is it. I got it. so it's going to the side.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
wetlands back here.
Yeah, okay.
And where the fence ends. So it doesn't meet the requirements for that 50-foot thing, but that was, because it's not a small thing, it's still, it's within the buffer, so we probably just, maybe, it's a positive with conditions, like a silt fence, maybe?
Or negative with condition.
Well, it's in the buffer zone. I always get this confused.
But
yeah.
positive, that we'd have them do a, they'd have to
I
go
want
for
them
an
to do a
NOI,
notice of
right?
intent.
Yeah,
right.
so it'd be a negative with conditions, yeah.
And basically either a silt, well, I think I like the socks.
Yeah,
myself.
I think the sock would be
And they're
better,
easy to
otherwise they're
install.
gonna rip up their
They could
lawn.
probably just put them along the fence line.
Yeah, because you're not gonna do any work beyond the stockade
No.
fence, right? Yeah, so I mean,
So
that's.
if they could put them along the
that's-
fence line, it would, if
Yeah.
anything ran off, we
Yeah.
could stop it there. And it wouldn't,
The
if you have
compostable-
kids, they could still play in the yard.
right.
As long as they don't go into the excavation.
The compostable ones that we used before and other.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
the easiest.
You probably know what they are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can either do the hay bales or the socks, either way, whatever you guys.
Yeah, I'd rather use the socks.
Sure.
Yeah.
But not the composite, the
Compost.
compost ones. I remember we had that issue before in another.
Or straw, I'm fine with straw too.
Straw is good, yeah.
We
No
just
hay.
want to avoid ones
Yeah.
with plastic in
No,
it.
of course.
That's all.
Absolutely,
We just
yeah.
want it to be able to disintegrate on its own.
Right, it'll biodegrade, yeah.
That's good to know.
Anybody have any other questions? Sean, do you have any questions? Bring it back to the board. So if we're not gonna make them do a notice of intent, it'll be negative
Negative.
determination and then
With conditions.
conditions for 9-inch either compost sock or straw
Along the back fence wall.
along the perimeter of the fence line.
Yeah.
Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for a negative determination located at 284 Oak Street with conditions.
I'll second.
Oh, sorry, Lynn.
That's okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good luck.
I'll see you. You have to wait the full 10 minutes or
Do you have anything else on your agenda, or do you want me to come back?
nothing that can't wait.
Okay.
All right. We'll reconvene discussion on 402 Groveland Street, order of conditions.
Great, thank you. Before I go further in my letter, it might be helpful if I highlighted what's written on the last page of my letter, page 6, which is kind of the reason I'm looking at what we're looking for. Engineers and attorneys and all, not only are we looking to try to get things permitted, try to comply with all, regulations, get things permanently as quickly and efficiently as possible, but then we have to look at the end game too. How do we comply? What has to be filed, whether it's Conservation Commission or zoning or planning? The permit is the beginning, but there's always an end. So we're always looking at the end. How do we satisfy everything? And so I had a paragraph in here specifically because this is a single-family house, some of the smaller projects. We're always concerned about banks, mortgage lenders. We never know what bank a buyer is going to pick, but banks hire an attorney to do the closing. The closing attorney has to do a title search, and they have to certify whether the title is clear and whether the bank should grant the mortgage or not. If there's a lien, no, unless it's paid off. If there's an easement, or someone has a right to cut across the property, no. Or if there's restrictions on the property, no, unless they're reasonable or don't affect the value. So Conservation order conditions is a encumbrance. It is a restriction on property. They're not atypical. We see them all over the place, but they look at them, the attorney and the bank looks at them to make sure, as I write in my letter, that banks want to make sure they're not buying a problem. is there an unfinished project that if the bank always assumes the worst, that they're going to foreclose 6 months after they grant the mortgage, and now they own the property, which means they have to abide by all permits. So they want to make sure that everything that should have been done or could have been done is done before they have a closing. So that's the view that I've been looking at some of these restrictions and conditions as what would a bank do, what would a buyer do moving forward? Is there a way we can fine-tune some of these so that the condition stays in place, but it's just more specific or more effective, so that the homeowner can comply, and if there is, either has a better chance to get a certificate of compliance, or gets a certificate of compliance with only, limited conditions that continue that are not onerous to a bank or a buyer. So, that being said, that was the point of my whole review before we recorded this lien, this restriction against the property. So back to my letter, the second comment or section that I had a comment on was condition number 3, which says, unscheduled inspections by Abington Conservation Commissioners or their designated staff may occur at any time during this project to ensure standards are being met. This condition will also apply once the project is completed in perpetuity to ensure the 100-foot buffer zone is intact. We cannot agree to such a wide-open, vague statement like that anybody can walk on that property at any time without any notice for perpetuity. Now, mind you, the board is already protected, or at least has the power to enter the property, because the standard pre-printed condition in the DEP form, number 15, says, the agent or members of the Conservation Commission and the Department of Environmental Protection shall have the right to enter and inspect the area subject to this order at reasonable hours to evaluate compliance with the conditions stated in this order, and may require the submittal of any data deemed necessary by the Conservation Commission or the department for that evaluation. So it's already in the pre-printed order that you have the right to go in reasonable time periods. And reasonable meaning would imply that you give the owner a heads up. You just wouldn't walk into their backyard. Your language says unscheduled inspections, meaning you just show up, at any time in perpetuity. We can't agree to that, and I think you understand why. I mean, for safety of not only Conservation Commission members, but the family that's living there, it should not be written that way. It should not be included in order of conditions, really, for a single family or anything else for that matter. So I've asked that it be deleted.
I think that number 15 is good, but the issue is that it doesn't say that that's in perpetuity. So I'm not in disagreement with you that I like the wording better in number 15 because it's reasonable times. I mean, obviously we don't want to show up at 2 a.m. in the morning either. We've had this conversation before. But I think we need to maybe change it to say, condition, standard DEP condition number 15 remains in, is in perpetuity somehow. We have to reword it, but I'd like it to continue after the work is complete. They have a certificate of compliance. We still have the authority to request to go on the property because we still have that ability to maintain it. I think that was the point of that, but I think unscheduled inspections, I would agree. I wouldn't want anybody just walking on my property either.
I like the wording in number 15.
Yeah, it's the in perpetuity thing is really what I think I'd like to make sure that we hold on to. I don't know what the rest of you think, but...
A certain amount of time after the project's complete,
Well, in perpetuity, I think we wanted it there because of the simple fact that that whole area is a giant resource area. I mean, there's a little piece of property in the center of that property that they're gonna put that house on. The road is going through a resource area, it's going through a floodplain area, and it's surrounded by wetlands. So that's why, I don't know about you, but I know in my neighborhood, I have seen people encroach further and further into wetlands every time a house changes hands, and they think, oh, this is my yard, I can cut this down and we can do this. And I think that's why we want to be able to look at a property that is surrounded by resource areas. you know, and so I agree with the perpetuity, you know, unscheduled inspections at any time, of course, that.
I like the wording under
Yeah.
the DEP conditions. It's
Yeah.
just, I think it's clear. It's just I think we just adopt it with, but this condition will exist in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And that way we have the ability of, you know, we get a complaint, we know we have, you know, we have authority. We really should be able to go on the property, but,
Correct.
you know, obviously, I think we all
Right.
would
I
want to
mean-
contact
Yeah.
the owner before
This
we,
is a very.
before we got on there,
property.
so. Does that,
Yeah,
So-
again, I would delete that number 3, but the in perpetuity is not an issue to us.
Okay.
Add
So
that
that's
into general condition number 15.
Yeah.
Now, and I will point out,
We just-
what's confusing is you guys have 3 sets of conditions. You have the pre-printed ones, you have the, you know, A through J's,
Yep.
and then you have this 1 through 63. In H9, it says, "Condition numbers sometimes shall apply in perpetuity, shall not expire with the issuance of a certificate of compliance." I think that's an opportunity where you could say, you know, general condition 15 shall apply in perpetuity, you know? But number 3 should be stricken. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming one of the goals of the board, well, hopefully, one of the goals of the board is to have the pre-printed conditions and then one set of other conditions. Are you going to merge the A through J's?
The goal
I
is
think
to
eventually,
eventually,
Yeah.
yeah.
For your own
just to see
sanity and
what's-
for, yeah, because there's a
Yeah.
couple of, not redundant, but there's 2 or 3 of them that are very similar in 2 or 3 spots where you could reduce the number of
I did
conditions.
most of putting that together about 20 years ago, so
Yeah,
it's kind of like the fee schedule. It's time
Well,
for
we
an
also
updating.
appreciate that you're
At
so
least
familiar
Alex
with
was
it, so
born
we
now,
can, you know,
then.
point it out, and that way we're able to do that.
It's hard to have a perfect document, I understand that, and, but moving on, number 7 on the, we'll call it the special conditions. This was just, the way it was printed, it said all plantings must be performed before construction occurs. Species that optimally planted in the fall, such as red maples, must be planted or may be planted no later than October 15, 2022. All other plantings shall commence in spring 2023 between May 15 and June. The order was issued after the deadline, October 15th, so I just said, I can't record this because we're immediately in violation. We can't plant the trees by October 15th, 2022. So I think probably the intent moving forward is don't mention a year, right?
I'm fine with that. We'll just say the replication has to be the first thing that begins
Well-
for the project.
We'll get to that, too.
If it's feasible.
Yeah, I mean, but October 15th, you don't want to plant trees in December, right?
Right.
You don't
No,
want anything in
absolutely.
December. That, which is, we all agree with that, it's just that wasn't printed that way.
Yeah,
So,
change the date.
yeah, it's
Remove
actually,
the
the
date.
date is mentioned somewhere else. You could delete this number 7 because
Yeah.
you'll see it appears again later. It's one of those things that shows up. Then we just jump down to number 19, which again, it's the way it's written. Quote, "Absolutely no debris may be left on the site." I'm just suggesting that, I'll read what I said. I would suggest the language might be slightly more specific. During the normal house construction process, pieces of sawed wood and other construction materials would generally be generated immediately within the construction area. The site will be picked up and cleaned at the end of each workday, but I'm concerned that if any debris is found at any time of the day, a cynical person could assert that my client was violating the express terms of this condition number 19, which says, absolutely no debris may be left on the site. Perhaps we can replace the existing wording with new wording, such as, quote, "Contractors shall be required to use good faith efforts to remove and secure all exterior home construction debris at the end of each workday so as to minimize the chance that debris might be blown into wetland areas," which I think is the intent of basically keep a clean site, right?
Yeah, it's keep a clean site, but these replication guidelines are written with the idea that the replication is done first, and then construction can occur. So you don't have to deal with, we've been working and sawing wood and all that, and then we're worried about replication. You're supposed to do the replication first, and then once that's all constructed and the plants, then you can start beginning on the home and the driveway.
Yeah, but
And then-
this says, this order of conditions is good throughout the whole construction process.
Right.
And this condition says absolutely no debris may be left on the site throughout the every day of the process. That can't be complied with. That's as
Yeah, you
written.
can do, I'm fine with the wording to make it so it's like, okay, there's not a little speck of plastic
Yeah, right.
that's on the thing. Yeah, I'm fine with that, but, secure at the end of
I
it.
Just-
think you might be at
Yeah.
a different, you're thinking of a different condition that's a little farther, because I agree with your point about the replication, but we
Yeah.
have to talk about that some, because you have to have access. But,
Right.
but this is just strictly debris.
Yeah.
I would suggest we take out the exterior home and just leave construction debris, and that way we can use it again. Does that make sense?
It does
guys?
make sense.
Using my word, but my wording, but take out exterior home.
Yeah.
Right?
And that way we can
Yeah,
use it for
all
any
construction
projects,
debris.
if we're gonna,
Yeah, you know what I'm getting to. While they're physically building the house, and it's 10 a.m. in the morning, and there's a guy up on the roof, and, you know, there's debris, and one of the conservation members walks onto the site, we said absolutely no debris may be on the site. That's a violation.
No,
it's
I
not.
think it was pretty much intended that they're not gonna, I mean, bear with me. A contractor goes to site, they're working there all day long. Oh geez, it's 5 of 5, I'm supposed to be this way, let's just go. It shouldn't be left at the end of the day
Right.
for debris just laying around. I mean,
Right.
that's what my intent was when I read this. It's like,
Yep, you're right, and again,
you know,
the
I mean,
lawyer
it
in me
does
coming out.
happen, it does happen.
Oh,
You get called off of a job site and you gotta leave it where it is, and if you don't lock it down,
and that's where my wording specifically addresses just what you said. Contracts should be required to use
well,
good faith efforts.
effort means like, we'll try to do our best, but
Yeah.
Well, all right,
I don't
contractors
feel
shall
like
be
it,
required
so,
to
yeah.
remove all
Yeah.
construction debris. Take out the good faith efforts. I was
yeah,
just-
I would definitely strike good faith effort. I mean, it just has to be cleared at the end of the day. I mean, obviously, when you're working, the wind blows, it's gonna send stuff,
Yeah.
so you just grab it at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Okay.
just get rid of that part.
So-
Strike good faith
So
effort.
they'll just be required to remove, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm fine with that.
That's, again, I think we're all thinking the same thing. We're just trying to
I
write
mean,
it so
we're
that,
definitely collaborating on changes, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because it's a benefit to you, it's a benefit to us.
yep, no doubt about it. Okay, so then number 20, actually, before I go to number 20, I noticed before I came to the meeting, number 18, just as a point, it says, again, it's a very
Where is
general
that?
statement.
Where is that? I don't have 18.
It's not in
Here
his
it is.
letter.
It's not on there.
It's not in the letter, it's
Oh.
in special condition 18.
Yeah.
Construction vehicles entering the site shall be cleaned before entering the site to prevent the introduction of invasive species.
Yep.
In reality, what you're asking is for every single vehicle that enters a construction site, even if they're 300 yards away from a replication area, has to be hosed down when they enter the site and then hosed down when they leave the site. I don't think that's what you're saying, and I don't think any contractor can do that. Maybe it's construction vehicles entering the replication area or entering the buffer area, something like that, I don't know. Although in this case, you know, everyone is coming right through the driveway. Again, I'm looking at this case and generally. Again, I don't know how someone can comply with that, and I don't know what you expect of them due to that wording. Construction vehicles entering the site should be cleaned before entering the site to prevent introduction of invasive species. Later on, it says you have to also clean out the beds of the trucks before you bring in soils and things
Well,
like
that's what I'm
that.
thinking. You'd want to make sure that the truck is clean, so you're not bringing any
Right.
dirt with invasive species.
Yeah, I get the intent
Yeah.
of this, and I agree with the
Yeah.
intent of this.
I don't think it needs to be hosed down or anything.
I don't think it says that. It
Well,
just
you-
says they
It
have
says
gotta
they're
clean
supposed-
'em.
You gotta clean them. They can go to the car wash. I mean, it's,
You have to clean it,
I work
yeah.
on hazardous waste sites, so we often expect people to clean their construction vehicles. I mean, their personal cars probably not, because they park far away, but,
Right.
Yeah, hazardous waste, yeah, whole different level.
but
Right, I
I'm
agree.
used to it, so, you know, it's doable. It's not something that's not
Well,
doable.
everything's doable, but everything's an expense, too.
It's a car wash, but.
I mean, so what would you be saying is that any piece of property in Abington that has wetlands on it, this condition would apply, that every vehicle that enters that property, even if it's not even near the wetlands, has to be washed down upon arrival and when it's leaving. I don't think that that's the level that you're looking for, but I'm just saying, I don't want my client in this situation to be fined or say that you're violating this.
What
I
do you
don't
think,
know.
Dr. Mullen?
The intent of this is to allow the replication site to succeed.
Yeah.
And if you're bringing in invasive species, little seeds,
Right.
then that's not going to work. You're going to have somebody out there plucking everything by hand. This is kind of a standard thing that we've seen in all the courses we've taken, all of what MACC has taken, to prevent as much as you can of those invasive species from getting in.
Yeah.
So it's not something that other construction people have never heard of before. So it's a pretty standard.
And depending on the site,
Condition.
yeah, it's easy to do,
Yeah.
or it's obvious to do. In this situation, the replication area is in the back of the site.
Which you'll be
Everybody,
doing, you can do first, and so then you don't have to worry about getting back there again, because once you've done the construction of the grading, you've done the plantings, you don't have to go back there again. So hopefully.
but this doesn't
once
say.
you start-
This doesn't say, after replication is done, this condition no longer applies.
Yeah.
The order condition
But,
is there to
so I
end
think the
project.
issue is that the 63 are specific for the replication and restoration.
Then it should
So-
say that, yeah.
Right, and that's
That makes
the
more
way we
sense.
originally did it, is because we were kind of tacking these on, because we realized, wow, given everything that we've been learning, we really need to have a lot more specific ones for replication. So that's the main reason.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and that explains a lot of my general questions. So
Right.
maybe, like in this example, during the replication area construction process, construction vehicles entering the site shall be cleaned.
Yeah.
Or we might need to
That makes
say,
sense.
These conditions X to Y only apply during,
Right.
at the beginning and through replication, construction.
Yeah.
Or something like that. We
Yeah.
might want to group a bunch of them, rather than keep putting, this is for replication.
Right.
But
Right.
eventually it will probably be its own section.
Exactly, put them all together. The following conditions apply during the construction of the replication area.
Correct.
And then there's 6 or 7 or 8 things under it.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. Again, this is what you want and what I don't want to be yelled at for,
Right.
right?
I don't think anybody's going to yell at you.
Oh,
For the purposes of this order of conditions, we probably should just, tack on, it's for the construction of the, until the replication of the, until the construction is finished of the replication area, this condition applies, or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
do you want me, I know Tony's not here tonight. I will try to update the current list based on the comments and what we're saying, and try to get it back to you.
oh, that'd be great.
I'd like to get a vote on them so that I can do the work, and then if someone will just review them and say, yes, go ahead and record it.
Yep,
Okay, maybe that's the goal?
yep. All right, so we're going to change number 18 to include
During the
during
construction of the
construction of
replication
wetlands.
area.
Wetland replication.
And so with 19, okay, we already addressed that language, the construction debris. Okay, number 20, there's this couple of back-to-back ones, they were specific, so they were bothersome, they were general, so they were bothersome. So 20 says, soils should be placed immediately or stockpiled for as little time as possible. Any soils to be stockpiled should be isolated from wetland resource areas and protected with plastic or canvas from erosion or drying. Stockpiles should not be more than 4 feet in height.
Yes.
I suggest that the second
I'm sorry, I've
sentence...
seen a project on Bedford Street that I drive by every day, and I want to scream. It's right next to a stream.
I suggested that the second sentence be clarified, and the third sentence, I said be deleted, but I'll take your point in just a second. I was suggesting that the second sentence say that any soils to be stockpiled should be isolated from wetland areas, and then insert, and if to be stockpiled in place for more than 2 weeks, they shall be covered with plaster or canvas or erosion. If it's a short-term stockpile, it's one thing, but if it's a long-term stockpile, yes, we have to secure it, for lack of a better word. And then
So just a question, why 2 weeks?
I put it out there.
Okay.
With construction and moving around, like saying 3 days, 4 days, a stockpile is going to be there. Typically, let's say, one of the stockpiles is usually where you dig out the foundation area. Some of that is gonna have to be removed as unsuitable soil. Some of it can be reused, the loam might be able to be reused. So, let's say that, the loam, right? So you have a grassed area, or an open area, you skim off the loam, and you save it somewhere on the site. You dig out the unsuitable area where the foundation's going, and that's gonna be replaced with clean gravel. So that loam gets set aside, right? If you find clean gravel, then great, you might be able to reuse it, but otherwise it's coming out. You're waiting now for the foundation guy to come in and pour his foundation. And then you have to get he gets the waterproofing done, and eventually gets backfilled, or maybe you have to wait for the sewer line, the pipes to go in. There's a coordination issue. So sometimes that guy who was supposed to show up and put the foundation on Tuesday calls you and says, I can't be there now until Saturday. And so that stockpile that was gonna be there for 4 days is now gonna be there for a week and a half. It's just things like that come up. Once they know that stockpile is gonna be hanging out there, yeah, they're gonna cover it, because they don't wanna lose the pile. The concern is obviously it can blow off, and if anything starts to grow into it, things like that. So that was my 2-week thing. It's just I thought it was reasonable for both the contractor and for the Conservation Commission. It's kind of just modus operandi in the construction.
I guess I don't understand what the difference would be between, hey, my friend, my colleague, Jim, is not going to be here tomorrow. There's going to be a rainstorm tonight.
That doesn't mean that they can't do it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that
they probably would do that.
it'd probably be good practice
Right.
to put the stuff on top, and I think that's all this is trying to say, is that if you're going to have any stockpiles of soil, they should be protected in order to prevent erosion, sedimentation, and, for the soils that you want to put in for the wetlands, you don't want it to dry out.
Right.
Right, so you
And then
want to keep it.
that's a different section.
Right,
Okay, there's
right.
another condition for that.
Right.
But this one basically says they should be placed immediately, and then it says and covered, which means immediately covered. And sometimes it's just not worth getting the canvas thing out of the garage and hauling it to the site in a truck, it's only gonna be here for 3 or 4 days. So I'm trying to put in a reasonable timetable of, look, it's here longer than everyone thinks, cover the thing. I threw the 2 weeks in. It doesn't mean they can't do it earlier. They may, especially if they know it's gonna be longer, or if there's bad weather coming. That was my thought. If 10 days, whatever, but I think 2 weeks is rational.
My thing would be just the inclement weather, adding something for that. Other than that, we've recently done projects at the house, not in wetlands, but, the piles are there no matter what. It's laborious to do the tarp, but, maybe not 2 weeks, maybe that's a little too long, but my theory is that if it's not inclement weather and it's a small pile, then I don't think that would be necessary, and they're less than 4 feet tall as stipulated, but just the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, the issue is not just rain, it's also when it dries out in the middle of the summer. I mean,
It's a giant dust
we've
bowl.
seen the dust storms on Route 18 from that same one with the big piles. So both ends of, the weather are an issue. I think 2 weeks is too long. I don't have a problem with a few days, because obviously they're,
Yeah.
but maybe.
I think 2 weeks is actually pretty reasonable, because you got a lot of moving around on the site. I mean, that fill could go back in 2 or 3 days, depending, and again, like Mr. Riley said, with the foundation guy, that does happen.
And I'm looking
Where it
at
could be
this
a 1 or 2.
general, not just my
Right.
site, but general construction.
Well, I like that comment, because it is the concrete guys that generally don't stick to schedule. So,
That's what I hear anyhow,
I think 2 weeks is reasonable. The 4-foot height is completely unreasonable. On a regular foundation, you're gonna pull out 200 yards of material.
I just don't want to see, 15-foot piles that just, on some of these small properties.
Then I would suggest you
because
reword
of
it, that
site
if you
or
need to
because of
say
property?
something like that, then I would say that stockpiles should not be more than 10 feet tall. But don't say no more than 4 feet. 4 feet tall is this.
And these lots aren't.
And if you want
I
us to
can see over
stockpile,
One
it,
load
you're
of-
gonna have a
One dump truck load's gonna be more than 4 feet tall in the
Then
middle.
what do you think is reasonable? I'm just
Like Sean was saying, I think we should
pick a,
max it out.
what?
Tim?
I don't want to just
Probably-
take it out. I want to
Our
put a number in
excavation
there.
specialist.
Maybe 15 feet, to be honest with you. 200-yard pile is a standard colonial foundation dig out.
I don't like it, but,
Where would we put it on a site like this? There's not enough room to manage it at 4 feet high.
yeah, I'm not arguing about the 4 feet. I just think 15 is a
But I know
lot.
visually, like, for us driving by, it's not great, but is that what we're allowed to legislate at this point? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
We have broad authority.
it's just a matter of us coming to,
Speaking of visual, what stops a guy from putting a blue tarp over a giant pile for everybody to look at? I think that's even more unsightly than a raw pile.
I'm not really worried about the
I'm not-
aesthetics?
visual. I'm
Yeah.
more worried
Then-
about the wetlands, so
Right.
that's really my issue. And
Then where does the height play into effect?
It's more likely to erode, and it's more likely to have dust. I mean, it's just, it's just physics.
More likely, yeah.
That's all. It just, 15 seems high, but, I'm
Yeah,
not.
but if you have 4 foot, even 5, 6
I'm
foot
not in-
piles, they're
so
gonna have
is-
no room to work.
So is
Right.
10 reasonable, or is,
Make it 12, does that make everyone happy? If you get a dump truck and it empties its dump, it's gonna be over 4 feet tall
Yeah.
automatically,
It's gonna be
unless it's actually a moving.
I'm not
like
arguing
6
about the
and
4
8.
feet, they have a point.
Just a pile of mulch is 4 feet.
Yeah, I'm
So-
not, but,
Throw in 12, and if it's 13, tell
I
me.
think 15's good.
I think
Just,
that's a little extreme. I'm
I don't
sorry.
think
It's
that's, what I do, that's not
Yeah,
extreme at
number
all.
one, we're talking about this site at 402, and it's surrounded by wetlands and buffers, and I just think that that's,
But Gene, to your point, the taller the pile, the smaller the footprint. The lower the
need-
pile, the larger the footprint of that
I understand
stockpile.
what you're saying, Mr. Riley, but I mean, I understand concrete. My husband was a contractor for years, and I know exactly what it's like to be delayed. However, if a pile's gonna be there for more than a couple of days, you really need to secure it, and that's just the way I feel. Whether it's 10 feet tall or 15 feet tall, that's another matter. But I'm just saying, I would rather see it secured because of this particular property. I mean, let's remember, we're here not because of the sightliness of it. We're trying to preserve the resource areas around the construction site. Is that not correct?
That is correct. I just don't agree with the height of the pile. I think that has nothing to do
That's
with it.
fine. The
If
height
we're-
of the
If we're
pile-
gonna cover it
No, the height
anyways,
of the pile is
Yeah,
fine.
if we're
I
gonna
mean,
cover
I'm
it,
We're gonna cover
willing
it,
to
you know?
defer to you people that know better. I mean, I'm not in construction, but I'm just saying, 20 feet, too excessive. 15, I'd be willing. 12, I don't know.
Do they have the space on the site?
I feel like we've become lawyers amongst ourselves.
I know, it's like, it's turning into a really big,
requirement height, that's,
And
nope.
we need to protect the resource areas, that's
All
my
I care
concern.
about is
Everybody's
making
here.
certain that there's no erosion, nothing's getting the
Right.
replication
Exactly.
site, nothing's getting there.
Erosion, you put
And we already have,
Straw wattles.
But
we
you
have
get a
them doing
nice
extensive
wind and-
erosion control as it is.
If it's windy, then you cover it.
That's the
and
thing,
again-
is, it's the covering.
Keep in mind that contractors have their own best business practices. They are going to do things that you don't even require them to do because it saves them money and it's the proper operation of a site, a construction site.
And we've also had to go the opposite way, Mr. Riley, and other applicants. So we're just trying to play what's fair across the board. We've had other incidences where they've come in and destroyed and just left a mess. We all know that.
But I'll just say that I
And
think
we're
the
just
problem
trying,
is
excuse
that...
me, I finish?
Sorry,
I'm just
I thought you were
saying, I just feel that that's why we were being so specific here. And maybe it sounds redundant or,
I think this is
overly
pre-printed, right?
cautious.
This is the pre-printed version. The 4 feet is in your 63 conditions. I'm saying it should never be in your 63 conditions. That standard wording should be changed, and for the reasons that were just recited. I will try to update that wording and submit it to you, but tell me the number, is it?
I don't think we should put a number on it. As long as we're requiring a cover on it, a time for when it has to be covered, whether it be 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever we decide, I don't think we should put a height
I don't want
requirement on it.
to, I'm
If it's
sorry, but
protected-
just drive by Route 18 and see those
Is it
50-foot
covered?
piles. None of it's covered,
Well, see, that's what would, so
and
if we
it's
make
under
the...
our jurisdiction, and it's not covered. And they got orders of conditions years ago that didn't require it.
Right, but at the end of the day, they don't have a cover on it. If we can agree for that any stockpile is covered, regardless of its height, I don't think we can put a height requirement on it. Who's gonna go out and measure the piles?
Well, I just don't want to see 50 feet. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. I don't think we should
we've been
either,
burnt,
but
and
if
I've
it-
seen it,
They don't have the room to make a 50-foot stockpile.
Not
there.
here.
You know, and that's,
That's the
Kathy
other
brings up a
thing.
good point. In typical construction, you're not gonna see 50
no,
foot.
I don't think we
No.
ever thought we would.
Yeah, that site is very unique because it's a huge site. That might be something when, if they're coming before you hypothetically, you would address that ahead. If you would have a large, if Target was building, you would want to say, assuming there was wetlands, we do not want any stockpiles more than 15 foot high, or whatever the number is. Typical smaller projects, residential construction, you're not going to get the size piles that are on that unnamed property on Route 18. Okay? So, I suggest we deleted the last sentence, because we're covering piles anyhow, that are not short-term. But you guys tell me.
Alex, you were going to say something.
Are we gonna take a vote
On everything at the end.
all the
We're going to
conditions
agree,
at
we're going to
once?
agree what we're going to do on each one and then vote on them at the end.
So I'm sorry, what's my direction on that one? Is it delete the last sentence, as I think Mr. Warner just mentioned, or is it,
I would like to take the height out of it. I'm
you can-
okay with the 2 weeks, or if we decide a shorter timetable, that's fine. I'm okay with covering it and protecting the wetlands, but the height is
With-
just, in my opinion, it's unreasonable.
with the understanding you can insert a condition on a project where we
Where
concerned
you
that they're
could
gonna have a
hit.
lot of fill,
Sure.
or a lot of piles, or, all right.
I'm fine with the height. I just want it covered. And-
I have to say the same thing. I like what you said, Tim. I mean, I will do away with the height, and because of each site is
Yeah, site-specific, so I mean...
exactly, so we can't really say, we can always add something if it's
Right.
really horrendous. But I do agree with Lynn that it just needs to be covered, because
Yeah.
this site is just surrounded, and that's just the way it
And
is.
I'm talking in generalities, but I know
And
what
I
you're saying.
understand, but we're talking about 402 tonight, correct? This is what we're talking about.
Again, specifically and generally, because
All right.
these are general conditions that have been
Right.
thrown onto this one.
Right.
What if we said to Dr. Mullen, right?
It is.
Dr. Mullen, shall be, any soils to be stockpiled for more than 72 hours shall be covered, something like
I
that?
like that.
I'm good with that.
72 hours,
You made
that's
all
good.
us happy right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Thank
happy
you.
with that.
That's actually,
Okay, then, number 21 is related to it. It says, basically, stockpiles of soil, including hydric soil for replication. Now, this is a concern specifically for this
Right,
parcel.
and I must say, I agree with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. This
Yeah.
one says that we have to keep all of our stockpiles at least 100 feet from the wetlands.
You can't.
We can't physically do that.
don't
the
we
way-
have a standard condition that you didn't, I guess Tony didn't put the As to, I don't see the A to Gs here.
Oh, I
We have a
thought we
standard-
did.
There's a standard one. We must have said what we wanted.
Yeah, I think we did. If that's in the,
So,
this one
so
here,
it's probably in
Yeah, it's
conflict.
on,
This is probably an
page 9.
overlap.
right here, the standard order conditions.
Yeah, we usually, but
We
we,
usually fill in a
yeah, I don't know what we
figure
filled
there.
in. We probably
I
told
don't
her.
either.
We probably put 50.
It's on
We
page
probably
9.
put
My
50.
guess.
I think we,
This was one of those situations
And it
where
just-
We don't have the footage
This
of.
one, A1?
yeah. So, oh, no,
We
there's
have
a
to
second one
merge.
too, I think.
Right,
take what we have and merge it with what we've had
Correct.
before, so that there's no
right,
redundancies.
and we also have to
Let me
spell
look.
out
Yeah, 'cause-
the replications.
Yeah, because we were, I think we just said
Specific order
15
conditions
feet from the wetlands
or
edge, so
restoration
let's see.
Yeah.
Whereas
Placement
before, we were
of-
just kind of like,
And we
as
had
the
one for the
project
flood,
came
for the
upon us, we would
fill
just-
within the 100-year floodplain.
So
Okay, never mind.
I suggested for this condition number, where are we?
21?
21? Yep.
50 feet.
I suggested that you tell us to keep it 50 feet from the wetland line. We can't do the 100, but we're happy to do the
Yeah,
50.
I think
That's
50 is
fine.
That's
reasonable.
reasonable.
That's fine.
And I don't, if we actually have A1 in there,
Yeah, but it doesn't have the footage on it.
Work line blank, oh, it didn't?
that's,
I don't see it, just
Well, I
A1
don't-
through 6.
Yeah, I don't see it.
oh, do you, I don't have
On
it.
page 9 of the order. Well, the order of condition.
But it would have been discussed. I know we wouldn't have just skipped it.
Yeah, but I think the 50 feet is good.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, so we'll adopt that one with 50, number 21.
And this is where, again, it's a little confusing. Number 20 says if you have a stockpile, you have to cover it. Number 21 says if you have a stockpile, you have to seed it.
Right.
We- How do I
I think
comply?
that's also
Well, I think if
probably
you, I
one of
mean,
the,
you're gonna seed a pile of gravel. You're gonna cover a pile of gravel.
it's supposed to be soil.
Well, it does say soils. It says stockpile soils should be securely stabilized. Contain any areas of exposed soil or stockpiles within and adjacent to the replication area will remain inactive for more than 7 days, shall be sown with New England Conservation, blah, blah, blah. So that's talking about throwing the seed in there.
I think the issue there is that there's and this is replication specific, if you have a pile of soil and you're going to want to use
The
that
hydric soil.
to put in there, but for some reason you can't get to it, and meanwhile you've got little invasive stuff coming and
Right.
floating around and sprouting, whereas if instead you can just basically outcompete it with some sort of native
Yep.
grass that grows really quickly, and then you don't have to worry about that
And I would
issue.
agree with, I think the intent of this is
Yeah.
the piles of hydric soil.
Exactly.
That are like being kept just
It's
outside the
not the
replication during construction.
Yeah.
But right above it, it says we're supposed to tarp anything within 72 hours. But I'm not, so I don't want to go throw seed on my pile and then tarp it.
Mm-hmm.
Should it be an either or? I don't know what's preferred.
I think the applicant
For,
should have
for
a choice.
replication, I think you're not going to want to have like a pile, huge pile that you've had to seed
Right.
for a
Right.
home. But for replication, I don't know about tarps.
Because I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong.
There's something, I'm just
think
kind of curious why.
I think the or would work, because
Huh?
the or would
It
work.
should.
So if somebody wants to seed it, instead of throwing a tarp on it,
Yeah.
Let them-
it'll actually be more stable, really,
Yeah.
long-term. So either way, so if you put the or in,
Yeah.
it will probably cover it.
Right.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
now,
but you're not going to tarp gravel.
No, of course.
no.
No, but this says
Yeah, but
This is soil.
This is high,
This
but
is soil.
I mean, I'm going back and forth between
Yeah, but
20
it is
and
replication
21, and I'm
specific,
like,
but
Yeah.
if somebody
Yeah.
wanted to seed instead of
Okay.
tarp, I'd be okay with that. 'Cause,
Okay.
it would,
It'd probably just
Probably
be
better for
easier
them,
to tarp.
actually.
it might be way better.
so,
Yeah.
And it's,
I'll write that in, but now, to try to establish a little consistency, and I apologize for this, Section 21 says, if the stockpile is going to be there for more than 7 days, cover it or seed it. Section 20, we just said 3 days. Should we make it say 7 days on both of them?
3.
I mean-
3 days on both, I think.
Sorry?
3 on both, just keep it consistent.
You're not
Okay,
going to
so
seed something.
you want me to change number 21 then?
yep.
I didn't hear that.
I said I don't think they're likely to seed a pile after 3 days. It seems a little fast.
Yeah.
well, it's an or.
No, you seed it, and then you get something that sprouts quickly.
In 3
The
days.
seed means just putting the seed on.
I know.
Yeah, so it's not like, it doesn't have anything to do with,
But I'm not going to want to seed a pile.
Yeah.
You're going to
because
seed a
then
pile that's going to be there for 3
scheduled to
days,
go-
and then you're going to move that dirt within 7 days. You're going to spread the seed.
Seed
It's
after
just-
7 days. You're gonna know what you wanna do before you do the work, so if you're gonna,
For simplicity, and
But also, I
push
think
back,
that-
We could
I would
talk
say
to-
7 days. You either cover it or seed it on all stockpiles, other than gravel,
This-
obviously.
I mean,
Any
this-
soils have to be covered or seeded if they're gonna be there for more than 7 days.
And as a commission, we have to take that he just pointed out a lot of repetition to us. We've got to do something about this at another time, but we got to make this more streamlined.
it would be nice to talk to someone like Kem Thompson, because that was the thing that they always mentioned, is whenever we've had conversations with them is, oh yeah, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna seed this if the stockpile is sitting here.
Yeah.
So I don't know why there's this difference between why the botanist is saying we seed it versus why don't you put a tarp on it?
Yeah.
And I think we need some clarification as to why there's differences in the approaches between people who are just doing construction versus a botanist.
Right.
Why they're making that decision.
And doing, if you're in the middle, ideally, I think if you're doing the replication area, you take out the hydric soils, you do your grading, whatever, you stockpile the hydric soils, and that's gonna go probably back in place within the next 2 or 3 days, 4 days, weather permitting and all that. Sometimes it's delayed. So I think what we're trying to say is, look, if a delay comes up, or if you know, when you put that pile in place, you know that's staying there for more than a week, then cover it now, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to give them a trigger, that if it's a short-term thing, fine. You're gonna put it back in place, whatever it is, whether it's gravel or hydric soils. But if you know at the time you create the pile, or if 7 days have passed because now you have a schedule snafu, then you have to take action, cover the thing, or seed it if it's hydric. Right? Which is my way of asking, should I put 7 days in section 20 and 21?
I think it's reasonable
Yeah.
for 20 and 21 to do 7 days. It keeps it,
Which is,
Consistent.
again, they can do it earlier, but you're making them do it if 7 days
Right.
pass.
Sure.
All right. In my letter, we jumped to 31.
7 days or earlier, that's how I feel.
No later
Yeah.
than 7 days.
No later than
No
7
later than
days, yeah.
7 days.
Yeah.
No later
Yeah.
than 7, if it goes beyond.
I'm gonna do my best, I'm trying to read my own writing, to put all this stuff in there. Okay. We're going to 31. Okay. 31 was very concerning. 31 says, the wetland scientist, the wetland specialist, supervisor, or monitor shall be present during the following tasks: before excavation or erosion control installation work begins, to inspect the site flagging; B, before soil addition to the area, to inspect excavations and likely post-construction groundwater elevations; C, after each stage of grading work is completed, to inspect finished elevations; D, during planting and seeding and after the first month of growing season, to inspect propagation techniques; E, every 2 months during each of the 3 growing seasons, to observe vegetation development and regulatory compliance; F, at the end of 3 growing seasons, to determine vegetation development and regulatory compliance. My concern, again, with this type of project, a single-family home, E and F especially jumped out at me. You're asking a homeowner to hire a wetland specialist. This has not been done before that I am aware, at least in Abington, that you would have to hire a wetland specialist. Obviously, when, hay bales replication goes in place, they come in and they make sure everything was done right. They're also, later in this, have to come in at the end of the growing season, or when they're gonna file the certificate of compliance and file a report, take pictures, to show that it is growing, it's successful. But this goes beyond that and asks that every 2 months during 3 years, you hire someone to come in and not only inspect, but you're also requiring them later to file a report that must have plans, photographs, narratives and stuff for every 2 months during a 3-year period. Even if you've completed it, the replication area, constructed it within the first 30 days, and it's growing by the end of the first year, great. But this says, keep bringing back every 2 months to do that. Again, on a larger project, I can see that. It's probably an ongoing project. It's going to be a 2 or 3 or 4 year build out. This one is a single family home. Consider it if it's, again, in addition to a home. It's a pretty large expense and responsibility for a homeowner to do that.
So the history of this is that, back in, I don't remember the exact year, DEP was very concerned. There was a study that was done back 1998 that showed that 54% of all replication projects in Massachusetts fail. They looked at 41 towns, including Abington, and they went through rigorously done study, and one of the recommendations was monitoring. The places where you had replication sites that were monitored pretty extensively had a direct correlation with the success. And so given this particular piece of this paper, DEP came up with replication guidelines to make it, basically help people do this monitoring. Because the problem is if your monitoring isn't successful after the 2 years, the clock starts again. And now you're dealing with another 2 years. which requires reports and reports. So you may end up having to spend just as much money if it fails. And if you have a situation where, like we had this past summer and the summers before, where you have a pretty big drought and all the plants are dead in July, well, the clock is still ticking at that point. So you need to have someone who can very quickly, oh my God, the plants are dying. And in terms of monitoring, you also need to be able to have someone who can say that these plants aren't working here because the way the soils were constructed was incorrectly done. Or, hey, we found these invasive species like buckthorn. It's really easy to pluck out once you catch it, but you wait a couple months and that sucker is this tall,
Right.
nasty thorns everywhere, much worse than rose, and you got to pull all that stuff out by hand. So it seems like a time intensive. At the same time, it's going to set you up for success. And that's the reason why I was going with those particular guidelines, so you don't have to deal with 4 years or, heaven forbid, 6 years, because every single time the clock restarts. So the more monitoring you can do, the
Yep,
better.
I understand the intent. I just, again, I want to put on, my concern is you're asking a homeowner to spend probably over $1,000 every time that person comes on site. When you're talking about hourly rates, this is the wetland scientist, driving from their office in Taunton to come up, inspect the site, go back to the office in Taunton, then they have to write a report, and they have to take the photos, and they have to submit and everything. That's a pretty good expense for a pretty small thing. And this doesn't, this again is a standard condition, whether you're doing 300 feet of replication or 3,000 feet of replication, there's no distinguishing here. A bigger project, sure, I don't have any qualms about it. I don't know what the happy medium is. I agree, we all want the replication to work, because my guy's not gonna get a certificate of compliance unless it's working. So it behooves him, her, whoever the homeowner is, to check during the summer, especially in the summer when you have a drought. They're gonna have to water, obviously, manually. But this document requires a wetland science specialist to come, do everything we just said, file a report every time, every 2 months. So basically, with every replication going on in Abington, you're gonna get reports coming in every 2 months with photographs and plans. I'm assuming you guys are gonna review them all, not Tony. And I just see this creating a huge problem, not only a burden for the homeowner, a burden for you guys. What is the way we can do this, though, to try to better ensure that replication areas, especially with the homeowners, can succeed?
Mr. Riley, I would like to just say that we have instituted these policies in similar, not quite this situation, but in other things that have come before this board, where they have had to have a wetland scientist there to oversee these projects and to ensure that the regulations and the replication is done correctly. The fact that this is a single-family home, it doesn't matter if it's a single-family home or not. It's being built in a resource area, okay? And replication areas have an extremely high failure rate on the South Shore. Like Lynn said, I think it's for the benefit of the applicant as well as this board that we do the best that we could possibly do to have this succeed the first time out. It doesn't matter if it's a single-family home or 3 homes. It's just the requirements that are there to succeed. And I mean, I do have some printouts here on stockpiles, and I mean not stockpiles, but how to effectively create and do the plantings and the first growing season requirements. I mean, if you'd like to have this, I'll give it to you, but this is what we're going by.
I don't want you to misunderstand me.
Well,
I'm not
I guess I am. I don't know.
Okay, I'm not objecting to a wetland specialist, sorry.
There's also called an environmental monitor. It's not a wetland scientist, so, I mean, they can come out, and there's a standard form that they use, which I have here on my phone if you'd like to look at it. And it's just like a checkoff sheet where they go through and they look at the property, they go, yep, 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 take some photos, send it in an email. It's not like they have to spend hours out there flagging the site.
Okay. We're not at,
It's a single-family home, and I
The
bet-
plants
It's
are
surrounded
plants.
by resource areas, though.
I get that, but
Plants are
building up
plants.
builder and the cost of.
I think every 2 months is too soon.
I think
I think
that,
that we could do once every growing season, or once every season, it says in
Can't do it
the...
I
once
think we're
every
missing
growing
the
season.
point. You know, the single-family home is not the issue.
Yeah.
It's the fact that we're up against the 5,000 square feet. This is a huge replication. And typically, you know, after 5,000 square feet, we're at like 4,900. We're almost at the 5,000, which would make it a limited project. Plus, we have another, I don't know, 4,000 square feet of compensatory storage, which is different from this. There's no vegetation monitoring, but.
Right, because that impacted the FEMA flood zone.
Yeah, but it is, for me, it's that this is a pretty darn big replication area, and I want to see it succeed.
Yeah,
So, and
I
that's.
agree.
And that's what concerns me, and, you know, understanding that this is a guideline that DEP came out with, that I think it's, you know, there's something to be said for it. You know, where none of us, well, Lynn is, but the, I mean,
would
the
just note-
PhD in biology.
I just want to be...
But can I finish?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that we need to be considering the largeness of this. The other thing I wanted to say, I think you misinterpreted the growing seasons. If I understand it, it's spring and fall. So it's not every year, but it's spring, fall, so you need 3 growing seasons, correct?
Do you agree with that?
Well, it's supposed to be 2
Each of the
growing
3
seasons.
growing
I put a third in there to actually, in case you didn't hit the 2 years, you'd have the 3rd year. If you want to go with just the 2, I'm fine with that.
I
But
just
am
wanna
I
clarify.
interpreting growing seasons correctly, though it's
Yeah,
spring
you
and
have to
fall?
do, you have to do spring and fall. There have to be reports at the beginning and the
But
end.
that's one growing season. March to
Right.
Oh,
November
it's
is
not.
one growing season.
I think is it 2?
You're supposed to have it at the beginning and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
end.
oh, yeah, you have
And then
to
you're
report
supposed to
Maybe
have
I'm just-
and report at the end. I
2
think-
growing seasons.
I think what Kathy is saying is, spring is one growing season, fall is number 2 growing season.
No.
No,
Right.
it's not.
No,
So
it's
when we
not.
say 3 growing
I'll
seasons, we're
defer to
saying 3 years.
3 years,
Right.
okay,
3
I was
years.
confused
Okay.
about
So the 3 years was meant to give you a little bit more of a wiggle room in case you didn't hit that 75%. But if you want it to be 2 years and just go ahead and meet the standards, then
Well, let me
I'm
just
fine with
clarify.
changing that.
I'm not saying delete all of 31, okay? Because 31 has 6 things to do. The first 4, we say, fine, it makes sense. The first one is the wetland specialist out there before excavation to inspect the flagging. The second one is they come back out before soil addition to inspect the excavations and the likely post-construction groundwater elevations. They come back after each stage of grading work is completed to inspect finished elevations. They come back during planting and season and after the first month of the growing season to inspect propagation. So they're already doing all of that. Later on in the conditions, they also must come at the end of the growing season. I'm fine with that. What I'm saying is, do we also have to come back every 2 months in between there? So if, you know, you'd be coming in, you'd be there in March at the beginning, then you'd be coming April, May, June, July, September, and November. When we're already there more than 4 times, because I just mentioned they're there pre-construction, during construction, a month after construction, and then at the end of the growing season. And then they come back, they have to keep coming back until they get their certificate of compliance, basically, right? So my concern in this project and in other projects is just omit the 2-month requirement. That's what I'm saying, because all of that is already embedded in there, that it's pretty sufficient. And if they fail, they don't get their certificate of compliance. And they're spending a lot of money to put those plants in there. They're gonna wanna water those plants. And if they don't get a certificate of compliance. This board's gonna inspect.
I mean, I think we'd still like to see some sort of progress update, though, instead of
Yep.
2 years from now, come in and say, I mean, hopefully you come in and say, everything's good, we got 95% replication, but it'd be nice after a year, the first year, or if you guys do the plantings in April next year, come back in October, send a report and say, this is what we have, and then,
Well, the regulation, the guidelines from DEP is beginning and the end of, so April, and then at the end of the year. and then you do it again and again.
So it'd basically be 4 reports, hopefully just 4 reports. total.
Hopefully 4. But then having some sort of, like what Jeannie was at, like a checklist, boom, boom, boom.
There is. I mean, there is a checklist
Would be
that I've found from an environmental monitor, because it says here, wetland specialist, supervisor, or monitor. So, I mean, you're not paying $1,000 for a wetland scientist to come out. They can assign someone who works with them, who has the experience to go out and monitor the sites. There is a form here, if you want to
I have
look
one
at
down in
it.
my truck.
He has one in his
down
truck.
my
You
truck.
do? All right.
And really, the risk actually transfers by taking that 2 months, every 2 months, to the homeowner
Right.
and to the
And they're gonna wanna-
contractor. Because if they fail because they didn't go out in July
Right.
and check,
The onus is.
The risk is already on the homeowner.
Right, they're gonna wanna check it every month to make
Right.
sure. If
But-
something dies, they wanna find out
You would hope, but I mean,
and
again.
replant it right then and there instead of waiting 2 years.
It doesn't always happen, but,
No.
the thing is, they won't get, if it fails, they're done.
Right,
And they will
yours-
have spent a lot of money that they shouldn't have. I think this was to protect, actually, the homeowner or whoever's doing it, honestly, the every 2 months.
But
And if you...
I understand, but this
and if
this
you-
is the government requiring them to do that every 2 months, okay? I don't think it's beyond you guys to at a meeting say, we would suggest you check this at least monthly, if not bi-monthly. That's fine, but your standard condition says you hire someone to come out on that property every 2 months for 3 years. That's a lot
Well,
for this type of project,
And this is a big wetland, so,
the issue is that whoever is gonna buy this property is gonna have enough money to buy it, to build a big home, to do a replication. They have to hire a scientist
Yep.
anyway. I'm fine with having some leeway where instead of 3, you're like, okay, we're gonna stick with the 2. You do the beginning and the end of the growing seasons and
I think that's reasonable.
monitor. But you have to have, we're trying to set you up for success. And if we can be specific enough about
Right.
saying you can't have more than rocks that are 4 inches, then I think we could be,
I saw
make
that.
certain
Yeah.
best practices.
No, I agree
So-
with it.
So
That's-
they're just meant, it seems, like I was saying, it's a little time consuming, it's a little expensive, but over what we want
Right.
is that it works.
Yep, we're
And-
all on the same page in that regard,
Yes,
right?
exactly. So, sometimes you just have to spend some money. Now, if you want it instead having a very long report, or I don't think it was meant to be a long report for the 2-month things, just to have a checklist, boom, boom, boom.
And that's
everything
all
looks
it is,
good.
really.
Here's a couple pictures, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's set
I'm-
via
And I'm sure
email.
that whoever the professional is will know what to do. And, that homeowner, that contractor is gonna make a decision that I should spend the money on the wetland scientist to come every so often, because if not, I'm gonna be spending the money to replace all the plants I just put in there 6 months ago.
Right.
So, if
Yeah.
you use it, you have all of that in A through D already, that they have to come in to make sure everything is established, pre-construction, during construction, and then a month after construction, and then at the end of the growing season, again, there's an
Beginning and
updated
end.
report, photos.
Yeah.
Pull out, later it says pull out any weeds you see, and then the 2 years, I think works, because if it's not working, if it's not growing after 2 years,
They got another 2.
well, yeah, it's gonna have to start, right? You're gonna say,
I think one of the reasons they had things like this in the guidelines is that concern of monitoring. Things were kind of slipping under the radar
Yeah.
because conservation commissions don't have the resources to go out and check everybody's sites. And things would just, I think 26% of all the projects just weren't even done.
yeah,
And a whole bunch of them also failed. So it wasn't meant to be like, oh, we're a bunch of big meanies and we're trying to
Right.
make you, do unreasonable things and fly in the air, things like that. But it's just to set it up because that will make everybody happy but the monitoring was the critical piece that was correlating with success.
And can I mention too, as a general policy thing, for the years that, typically I don't come in front of the Conservation Commission, the engineer does, and I just stay home, because it's usually an engineering issue, not a legal issue, or design issue. One of the things that, as all these new conditions get promulgated by DEP or MAC, MACC and all this stuff, it's becoming more of a concern, legal issues, because what the past practice has always been, we have a hearing, the plans get approved, you guys take a vote to issue an order of conditions, and the engineer and the attorney and the client walk away and they leave the room. And then later that night, you guys go through what conditions to add. they never heard of it, they weren't part of the conversation, they didn't know anything about this 2-month requirement, hiring a wetland specialist, they don't know any of these conditions until the order condition gets delivered to them and says, go ahead, record this against your property. And that's, I don't know if maybe we should stay to the end of the meetings and follow your discussion and see if there's anything that jumps out at us. You know, some of these things, like when you said, you know, don't stockpile within 100 feet of a wetland, I would have said, I can't do that on this one, that type of thing. So I don't know what other towns do. Abington's always done it that way. But now that there's really 12 pages of conditions, it's gonna have to be more of a communication or, you know,
I think the 12 pages were increased, what we're talking about, these extra conditions, are really the replication. And we haven't done tremendous amounts of replication in the past, based on my experience, but we are seeing it
More.
because we're moving into properties that were,
yeah.
you know, more difficult to deal with. So I think the replication has come to the forefront. And essentially, we are looking at a DEP policy. We're not inventing these. These are coming from DEP, trying to help us. So.
I mean, there have been applicants that have come before us where their sites are so complicated and they're single-family homes that we've had to have peer reviews come in and redo and give us their recommendations. So, I mean, we had DEP out to 402 and
482.
they went over and redid the flagging and made the necessary changes.
Yeah.
But,
You know what I'm saying? It's like-
we are following the guidelines that
In an
DEP has.
In an effort to make sure that the owner understands what the conditions are, you know, maybe there's a better way that when we're discussing what conditions are being implemented, they should be in the room. You know what I mean? And that, maybe that means they have to stay here till 10 o'clock at night, even though the hearing was over at 7:30.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, it's just, do you understand?
I
From the
don't,
outside looking in.
I do, and we're a volunteer board too, and we're just
Right.
trying to do our due diligence and follow the guidelines that we swore to uphold, and
except at that point, we have closed the hearing, so, and we've approved the plans. So the discussion is still amongst us, but they should stay, generally, if it's something complicated. I mean, something simple.
Or should it be part of the hearing, and part of your vote? You know, you just don't take a vote to issue an order of conditions. You have a discussion and say, we're going to take a vote to issue order conditions with conditions A1 through 6, B2, B5, you know, blah, 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 blah.
Well,
That's your vote. I don't know.
sometimes we actually wait because we are,
Yeah, you've got a lot of people here.
we have a lot of people here, so it generally, we've done it for years afterwards, just because of
Yep.
sometimes the
And I'm not
agenda.
saying it's wrong, I don't know what other way you do it, I'm just bringing it up that that's part of the disconnect, I think, where people don't know what's in the order because they just thought they got a pre-printed form, this other stuff. Anyways, I'm taking way too much of your time. Where are we?
Did we came to a
38.
conclusion on that one?
Oh, two
So
growing
2
seasons.
growing seasons
Two growing-
and
be-
report
beginning and
beginning and
end
the
of-
end of each growing season.
Beginning and end of each growing season and environmental monitoring.
yep.
I'll try to wordsmith it and submit it for someone to look at, which I'm
Okay.
assuming will be you. Right?
Probably.
Okay. 38, I think this was just another date issue. 38 said all plants will be watered during planting, blah, blah, blah. Trees or shrubs planted after October 15th, 2022. I said, you know, remove the year reference, right?
Yeah.
And we request the last 2 sentences required in the submittal of the watering log. The last 2 sentences say, the applicant shall basically it says, plant your trees, plant your shrubs, make sure they're fully watered. You can use watering bags if you want to, but make sure you water them, depending on the weather. Then it says, the applicant shall maintain a watering log for all plants installed on the project, indicating dates of watering and weather events. This log must be submitted as part of the documentation for the certificate of compliance. I asked that those 2 sentences be deleted because you're asking us to basically keep a log of every time we put a hose on a plant and every day it rains, you know, basically keep this whole log and submit it to you as part of the certificate of compliance. Certificate of compliance is not going to be issued unless those plants are thriving. So it just seems like another workload that what are we getting? If I issue you a watering log and the plants are dead, I'm not getting my certificate of compliance. if I forget to issue a watering log, but the plants are thriving and it conforms to the plans, then I should get my certificate of compliance. But it just seems that
That's just
might not
per
be
the
necessary.
DEP guidelines.
Yeah.
They mentioned that you should have documentation of watering. And so the wording of that, DOT took that guideline and,
it just seems, again, cumbersome and of little value.
right, but that's, I know, I
I
understand,
understand.
but
That's
it's what they had in the guidelines, and DOT must have noticed that, and so I took that straight from how DOT,
Who's DOT?
Department of Transportation, because they do replication and restoration
Oh,
for
you
some of their
work for them?
projects. I do not.
Okay, I just...
So I was just
get the
kind of, I was
disconnect with
looking
DOT.
for examples of
Oh, okay.
good orders of conditions and for replications.
Okay.
And I found ones that DOT had, and it
That's
was
where some of
all
these came from?
basically, yeah.
Okay.
So I was trying, I'm not making, unreasonable things, and so
No,
I was
but-
like, okay, well, that's what they did, and they mentioned here, you should have documentation of watering, so we'll put that in.
There's no animosity here, this is all constructive dialogue.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to get our point, the
Yeah.
outside looking in, again, with, now, all right, we already have the wetland specialist has to be there beginning and end, file a report,
Or the monitor.
or the monitor, right? or the
Not
mo-
just the specialist.
Okay, I'm using it as a general term.
Right.
And now we have to have a watering log and a weather log on top of that, in addition to the photos and the plans. I'm like,
Part of the
is it
reason
really
for
needed?
that, though, I think, is it's supposed to be helpful for the wetland scientist to know, like, okay, my plants died, why? Was it because of the placement? Did I put it, the wrong plants here? What was the weather, like, we're having too much rain, et cetera, of that.
And-
So I think
and-
that's why that was part of the DEP guidelines.
And that
was
might
just to
be
get
something that actually is created between the wetland scientist and the property owner.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying here, though, it is a requirement, or you're not going to get a certificate of compliance, even if your plants are thriving. I'm saying, why?
I'm
right?
just going with what DEP
I agree.
suggests,
And
so.
I'm like, let's not make this a cumbersome process where every file you guys have is going to be like this, because you're going to get initially reports every 2 months, photographs every 2 months, and then watering logs. It's a lot.
Did you say it was a DOT or DEP requirement?
DEP had that, and the language, so DOT read this, I've got the guidelines. They read that, and they had it written that way for their replication order of conditions. So
So how was
that's,
DEP's recommendation?
their recommendation is just that documentation of watering should be provided. And DOT said, okay, this is, water logs should be taken.
And mind you, DOT projects
Or
are
logs.
usually public works projects, not on private property. You're
Right.
building a road, so somebody physically has to go back out there.
Right.
It's a state project, so I can understand why they have all of that.
That's a big burden for a homeowner to take
Yeah.
that on.
It's huge, and honestly, no one's gonna do it. They're gonna
Nope.
submit false
Oh,
logs. It's
have
the
to.
same thing as if you ask somebody to write out what they eat for a day. We're just gonna get whatever they can do to appease us. There's gotta be another way that doesn't require somebody to do a homework project. We've got people going out there, we have all of these other things in place. There's gotta be something else. I mean, it's a residence.
In the
I
end,
wouldn't do that.
again, in the end, it is our order of conditions requires us to plant what's on the plan, to make it thrive, and come back to you and ask for it to be inspected in certificate of compliance. How we get there, how often we water is between us and our wetlands monitor or wetlands specialist. It would be good practice if we did keep it track, or maybe the specialist that we hired does keep track. But I'm just saying, do you really need to make that mandatory to get a certificate of compliance? I would say it's of little of no value, paper pushing, and cumbersome. If the plants aren't living, there is no certificate of compliance.
I think this falls into what we just talked about the 2 months. This is to help the homeowner and the applicant get something successful and to keep track of it. Once again, we're in this.
And that's their means and method.
Right.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 because, honestly, we want them to succeed.
Right.
And that these things are if they don't do these things, they're probably at a higher risk, and we are talking a large wetland, so I don't know. I understand your point, but I also know that the intent was to make this succeed, knowing, because I did read that 1998 paper, and
Even if it, it would be
I
completely
found it
different
quite
if you said,
interesting.
Yeah.
it is suggested that the applicant maintain a water log and a weather report in the event that the replication fails, or the replication fails, so the conservation and the wetland scientists can review it. That's a different thing. This says, you must do this, and you must submit this, or you're not getting a certificate of compliance, even if you did everything else we told you to do. That's not right.
But you'll have the same situation, it's like, you should probably do it to help out the wetland scientist, and then the person's gonna be like, sorry, I didn't bother to do it because you made it, like, I'm not gonna help
Yeah,
out.
To them,
Yeah, oh, well.
at the end of the day, they want to come back here in 2 years for a certificate of compliance. If those plants, if that replication isn't at least 75%, they're not going to get it.
Right.
How they get there is up to them.
And how many past app projects do we have where there's been unsuccessful replication and
I don't
they're
know
just
how many-
sitting there?
And I'm
They're
not
just
sure that
sitting
we
there.
should be focusing everything
We're not
in our
talking
meeting
about those.
upon
I don't know.
past bad practices. That was one thing I wrote down.
I don't even
Everything is being
think it was
framed
that,
from-
Dan. I think it was
from
the fact that we
you're
were talking.
viewing everyone coming in here as in bad faith or not automatically going by their orders of conditions. I think that it's like guilty until proven innocent, almost. I don't know.
I actually think that these suggestions are actually positive rather than negative. I think we're just discussing whether we're going to include them. But I think they're positive because we really are trying to help. The point of these, no, DEP is not trying to punish anybody. They're trying to make these replication areas successful because overall, when they've done the surveys, they've failed. A good percentage of them. And, it holds up their certificate of compliance, and in this case, it could even hold up their ability to buy the house because, they're going to need the COC to execute the mortgage, so.
And that's why, like what Sean said, we can suggest it. Whether they decide to do it or not, that's up to them. I think at the end of the day, everyone in this room, the goal is in 2 years to come back for certificate of compliance and we vote to approve. And not say, well, all the plants are dead, we gotta redo everything.
Right.
Nobody wants that.
Why don't I try to put that language in there and see if that kind of flows with the end document? So it's in the order that it's suggested you keep track of when you're watering, in case we have to look back at it, but it's just not a mandatory component of the certificate of compliance, right?
I mean, the wetland scientists might already have something like that.
Yeah.
For that reason you were talking about, if stuff's being overwatered and dies, they know why. They might already have that.
Okay, 43. 43 says, an inspection shall occur and monitoring report shall be submitted to the Conservation Commission at the beginning, ending, and every 2 months during the growing season for each of 3 years. Monitoring shall be required until regulatory compliance goals are met. This is similar to condition 31. It's kind of redundant, so I would suggest we kind of do the same thing. Well, actually, I think we could just delete 43 because it already is addressed in 31.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine.
45, where is that? Oh, yeah, this condition lists specific information which is required for any reports to be filed with the commission, including the need to include, quote, narratives, plans, and color photographs in the report. I mentioned this increases expenses to the applicant and administrative issues for the Conservation Commission. But at a minimum, I would request that number 45 be more specific to and revised to read, if a certificate of compliance is not issued within 1 year after construction is commenced, then reports to describe, those reports would be submitted, meaning, now, this says that we need to, Section 31 already said we were going to file a report at the end of the year, right? This one talks about a report that is much more definitive. It is soil stability characteristics, well, I won't read it off, but you can see A through J. 48 and 49 already require reports to be filed with the request for certificate of compliance. So what I'm saying is, if 48 and 49 say, give us a list of what needs to be in the report for the certificate of compliance, then this section 45, which talks about submitting reports, should have a caveat that says, if a certificate of compliance is not issued within 1 year, then you need to file this detailed report. If this is going to go over an extended time, then I want to know the report, because if you're not giving us the information, if you are giving us the information with your request for certificate of compliance, I don't also need this. But if your certificate of compliance is not going to be requested until next year, then I want this report this year. I want an update. That's what I'm...
So it's construction of the replication area. Are you talking 1 year replication? What construction are you talking
Again, I was reading this as...
These are all for replication, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're all
this
for
is all
replication.
specific just to the replication area.
Yeah.
So, and if that's the case, see, I was reading this, this is ongoing to the
Yeah,
order.
yeah.
So if you want me to reword it to say, for replication, or whatever the wording is that kind of focuses it on that, I can do that.
I think that that's reasonable, because we're going to get the monitor reports, beginning and end, that can be that checklist. And then this is, if the replication after a year is not working, we'll know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Or it's not, it still needs another growing season.
Okay, I think we all are on the same page there.
Yep.
47, it says, following construction of the replication area and prior to any other work on the site, the wetland specialist will certify to the commission that the area has been constructed in accordance with the order conditions. Such certification shall be accompanied by a plan showing the limits of the replication area and final grades as surveyed by a licensed land surveyor, which meet grades shown on the plans approved by the order conditions. We ask that this condition number 47 be deleted for 2 reasons. For this project and for many other projects, it is not possible to finish construction of the replication area, quote, prior to any other work on the site, as the applicant needs to clear and construct a temporary driveway at a minimum before it can later then build the replication area, which is at the rear of the site. So we can't build the replication area first before we do any other work. We have to do the other work before we can get to the replication work. Then later in the list of conditions at section 49, or number 49, an as-built plan is prepared by an engineer or surveyor is required to be submitted to the commission upon completion of construction, together with a narrative and before and after photographs. Thus, requiring an applicant to hire a surveyor and engineer to draft and file a plan after the replication work is completed, and then to again file a plan when the site work is completed would seem to be unnecessary, redundant, double expense. We believe section 49 removes the need to keep condition 47, and thus we're asking, in this case, to be deleted. So, again, it's partially site-specific. We can't abide by the don't do any work until the replication is done, because physically it's impossible.
Well, I understand, like, the temporary driveway to get to the replication site can modify the language, except for the work to create the driveway to get to the
Yeah,
replication site.
like if we said, like,
But
home construction shall not start, or something, before replication, or something like that.
For this, yeah.
Yeah, for this one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, that's fine. I have to go back and look at this a little bit more, but in terms of the plan, having the licensed land surveyor and all that stuff, I think that was meant to be like, this is the very last thing that you're going to be doing, and that's part of what you're going to be submitting at the end. So it's not like a double expense, it's like you're paying for it, and then you
I'll look
submit
at
it
it in
with all
that
the other
light.
stuff.
Now that I know that these are intended to apply to the replication portion of the
Yeah.
project, I'll try to see how it meshes with the other sections. Because, so I think you guys are looking at two things. You would like to have an update when the replication area is completed. Let us know and show us a picture of what you've done, and give us a report, right?
Yeah.
And that might happen in 30 days after we start the project. We also know that at the end of the project, the house construction, the lawn seeding, all that, there's going to be an as-built plan of the entire site for the
Right.
certificate of compliance.
But you should be able to take, if you did do the replication area, you should just be able to take that data
Yeah.
and incorporate it. We're not
And-
looking for you to do it twice,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, that was I think
What we're trying to do.
is that this needs to be done, but it's not like doing it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've got you. Let me ask you this, though. You may know this better than I. A lot of times I've seen reports where the replication area is drawn by wetland scientists, in a report, identifying the plants and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and even giving dimensions or whatever. Is that sufficient for the report at the end of the replication construction? Because this says it has to be a licensed land surveyor has to go out there and do it. I don't know if that's required, or is it just that language slipped in?
I think that's typically done because you do have to have
The
grading.
grades, yeah.
And the concern there is to make certain that everything has been done
Okay.
appropriately.
All right, so we'll keep that in there.
Yeah.
Good.
I think so.
Okay. And then section 49, just missing words. Just had to insert, section 49 says, "These certificate of compliance shall include the following." It's really the request for the certificate of compliance shall include the following.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's another 11 conditions that are attached at the end there, which are under the title that these conditions shall remain in perpetuity. Number one, I just had a question or a suggestion. Number one says, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and fertilizers shall not be used within 100 feet of the wetlands or within the riverfront areas. Organic pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and fertilizers may be used subject to the review and approval of the Conservation Commission. This shall be noted in the certificate of compliance and shall be ongoing in perpetuity. I'm just asking the question, if it's an organic fertilizer, do they really need to come to the Conservation Commission to get it approved, or is it sufficient to just say organic fertilizers and herbicides are allowed? Because otherwise, someone's going to submit a letter or come to a meeting or whatever, and I don't know what you're looking to do there. It seems like if it's organic, it's allowed. But correct me if I'm wrong. Do you want to review and approve everyone's herbicides, fungicides, fertilizers if it's organic?
Right, so the thing is, something that's organic sounds really great, but it's still killing things. So that's something, like I have my yard sprayed for mosquitoes, and I'm like, oh, the nice peppermint oil, but you know what? It's still killing things. And that can have an herbicide, can be organic, but it's still killing plants.
So what if the wetland scientist sends an email over and says, this is what we plan on using?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that it's not like, we would come up a meeting, right? And Paul, you'd say, hey, I got a thing from the wetland scientist, and they were wondering if they can use this, and then you'd be like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And that's the extent of
Which
it. It's
is,
not like this big
Yeah.
report, it's just,
So they just
give
should,
us a heads
like,
up.
notify you.
Yeah, you don't have to come before us to,
It's just subject to the review and approval, is just,
Yeah,
we talk about it.
that's something if we had an agent, the agent would go out and look
Right.
and say, this is
That's what
good.
I'm saying, you guys meet like
We
every
don't
2
have
weeks
that
or
luxury.
sometimes every
Yeah.
month, depending on your schedules. So, all right, so you will leave it as it is, and if you guys have a concern, you'll get in touch with them, right?
Yeah, if they notify us, we will.
Yeah,
We just want to make certain that there's communication going back and forth between, if they make a sudden change. There's a lot of things that we let them do, say in the order of conditions, like, yep, if you notice something, it's on their judgment about what to do, but there are some things, like all of a sudden, we'd like to use an herbicide, and our conditions were like, don't use anything. With this, it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I need to contact you guys, let you know we have the situation, and
Yeah.
instead of saying no pesticides can be used, you could say,
Right.
we can help them we can agree to it or not. And it's not like this big, long, formal process.
No,
It's
like
just
I'm sure most
contact us.
homeowners are gonna fertilize their lawn, right? Most, not everyone, but most. And maybe they're gonna put down some grub stuff or whatever. So this says that you guys are gonna review and approve those products,
Yeah.
if that's what you wanna do. Okay. Okay.
We may eventually come up with an approved list.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that, I
that's
think,
true.
would
Here's an
help your
appendix.
sanity.
Yeah,
Right.
eventually, we'll figure it out. But-
Yeah, because I think you have like a list of, these are invasive weeds.
Yeah.
Don't use them, get rid of them. And you might say, these are acceptable organic
Anything else,
pesticide.
please contact us.
Exactly,
It's a little tricky because people will say, I've got this peppermint oil thing, it's nice and organic, and it still kills bugs just as effectively.
And look,
As
in
some-
reality, just to be honest with you,
Yeah.
people are not gonna send you an email every spring telling you what
Right.
bag they just bought from Lowe's.
Yeah, I don't
absolutely.
wanna be the one to make the decision. I think it should come from their
No,
science, their
have we done
wetland
that with
scientists.
anybody?
Yeah, the wetland
If we
scientists.
if we approve fertilizer and grass dies, they're gonna say, well, you guys told us to use that, and
Yeah,
then,
you're right.
Issues.
yeah.
It's got a good point there.
So should we say then, organic pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and fertilizers, which are approved by
The recommendation
owners-
of the, recommendation of the wetland scientist.
Of the owner's wetland scientist may be used.
Yeah,
So you at least have somebody who knows what they're looking at.
right.
Well, I think the purpose is we don't want you to use like herbicides.
No, I'm saying
Right.
organic. Sorry,
fungicides
the
and
first sentence stays there. We don't want anything. Second sentence talks about organic types.
What they can use.
Can be used if,
Maybe use, I think the language is just funny. It's basically more like, you're not supposed to be using herbicides, you're not supposed to be using pesticides, but if you come to us, we can give you the exception to that.
and I think what he's saying is, well, go to their wetland specialist.
Which,
You know what I mean?
yeah, that sounds right. And
'Cause
I
then
don't-
the
do we
onus is on
request
them
that every
to make sure
townsperson
they
that wants to
comply.
use fertilizer come before us?
We tell them that they can't.
We tell them we can't at all.
It's on all of our, it's on all of our,
Gotcha.
Conditions that
The
we
purpose is that
As long as we're
we
doing it
don't.
to everybody, that was my.
Yeah, they're not supposed to do anything. No pesticides, no herbicides, nothing is supposed to be used. So in this one, it's more like, instead of being like, nope, too bad, sucks to be you, we're saying you can, but you need to contact us first. The wetlands scientists should come to us and say, hey, by the way, I really think we need to use this herbicide.
So you
I
just
don't
leave
think
it
they need
as,
to come, they don't need to come before us.
They don't have to come
No,
for us, they can just send
Send
us
an
an
email
email.
to Tony and she can forward it off, we can look at it.
right?
Yeah.
And again, with the understanding that it might happen the first year, but it's probably gonna get lost in the shuffle as years go by. But but you guys, as a Conservation Commission, always have the right to schedule an inspection if you have a concern, if you drive by and see something weird, you can always ask, what do you use on your lawn? Don't do that, because it's in the order, right? Okay. Number 6. Oh, okay. This one, again, this is kind of unique to this project. Prior to the issuance of certificate of compliance, permanent boundary markers shall be installed to mark 100-foot no disturbance buffer zones. And it continues on. We can't do that in this project, so my suggestion, and I don't know if it's allowable, is that we would put markers on the wetland line instead of the 100-foot line, or no markers at all.
What do we do with the 20-foot no build?
With the
Put the
20-foot
If you
line.
put the markers right on the wetlands, people are gonna try and go right up to that.
Do it at 20 feet?
Yeah, at least, I understand your point, the whole,
Otherwise, you'd have,
you're gonna have,
We're gonna have little markers right around the back
they're not gonna be able
door
to
of the
build a
house.
house.
We
No.
have to have some sort of mechanism to make certain that 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, if someone goes, I don't like those plants, I'm just gonna plant more lawn.
Yeah, it's a point of
And then-
reference.
Yeah.
Right?
but I
So-
was, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's just a matter of like, how do we set that up so that it's pretty clear to someone 50 years from now?
Right.
That
'Cause
we're
it-
not supposed to do that.
Because it really isn't a 100-foot no disturbance zone, but the 20 feet is,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
I mean, the 100-foot buffer is not a no disturbance zone technically.
It's
Right.
just, you gotta,
You
you
need
gotta
to
come to
come-
us.
Right, exactly.
Get permission.
Yeah, and to be
Yeah.
clear, like, this house is being built on uplands.
Yep.
Yeah,
But you also have a replication site, and that,
Yeah,
I think
right.
that's the issue, is we don't want someone to come in.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
someone buys a house, they make it, they flip it, and then the person doesn't really read the orders carefully.
We don't
and
have
then they
any
don't know.
objection to it, I just want to know where should we put them? Because we
Okay.
can't do it at the 100-foot marker.
Okay.
And again, is this specific to the replication area? Or
I
is it
think it was for both, not just replication.
for
I think it was
wetland areas?
overall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, so that's helpful. Number 8, oh, okay, 8. 8 says, "No further activities," that's the big phrase, "will be permitted on the balance of the subject parcel except for maintenance of this area unless they are filed as a limited project under 310 CMR 10.53 Part 3, or exempt under 310 CMR 10.58. This condition, as noted, will be noticed that the certificate of compliance will be in perpetuity. So basically saying, no further activities will be permitted unless it's a limited project or if it's subject to the Rivers Protection Act. In this case, the Rivers Protection Act doesn't apply really here, so you're saying we'll only allow something if it's a limited project. I'm trying to say is, this says nothing will be permitted. I'm saying that's kind of onerous, because if a property owner wanted to do something in the backyard, they have to come to you for permission because they're within the 100 feet. But this says, don't even ask, because we're not giving it to you. They should be allowed to at least apply. So I'm asking that 8 be deleted.
So I think this might be just misworded. I think that you are, I forgot what the number is in here.
Number 8.
8.
No, the square footage
Yeah,
of the
you're like 40 square feet away from the 5,000 square foot.
I think it's about how much wetland you can disturb without
Because then
being
it
a limited
becomes a lim-
project.
then it
I think
becomes
it's
a limited
worded
project.
wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah, because this says no further activities will be
It's-
on the balance of the subject property.
That doesn't make sense.
No.
I think it has to do.
Unless it qualifies
Yeah.
as limit, so, yeah.
So, but it is for the,
If I wanted to put just a swimming pool in the backyard, I need to get an order of conditions, right? Because I'm going to be within
that's
100
correct.
foot buffer.
But I think what we're.
This says I can't do that.
Yeah, I think what this was intended to say was that if you are going to fill in more than
40 more square feet.
40 more square feet,
Now you're over the
you
Now you're
cannot
over the
fill, it.
5,000.
you have to become a limited project.
Well, what if we, instead of no further activities, then
That
say-
needs to be fixed, yeah.
Yeah, so
Any further construction would fall under...
no further filling of wetlands, period, just say that, right?
Yeah. Unless it qualifies as
It's
a limited project.
Yeah.
No further filling of wetlands.
I think it was just, it was under the replication, so I think it was,
See, so I'm not
Yeah.
crazy.
it
That's
just doesn't
why
have that
it's-
reference.
Right.
Okay, so, again, good discussion. Number 9, I said that number 9 needs to be revised because the current wording is unworkable. Again, it might be similar to number 8. It currently reads as follows. Prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance and upon the sale of the property to every subsequent owner, the new owner shall provide a letter to the Conservation Commission acknowledging that he or she understands the wetland restrictions bound to this property. A copy of this letter shall accompany a written request for a certificate of compliance. This shall be an ongoing condition and shall be recorded in the deed. All owners shall follow this condition on all subsequent deeds in perpetuity. And I said, to require every subsequent owner to submit a letter to the Conservation Commission will be difficult for the Conservation Commission to enforce administratively during the next several decades. The current applicant, however, has no problem meeting this requirement, and we can agree to submit the desired letter if the property has been sold prior to the request for the certificate of compliance. Well, then we'll get the buyer to sign something. Second, the wording in the last 2 sentences should be revised so that it is more effective. I would suggest it read as follows, and I printed something there, that prior to the issuance of a certificate of compliance, this is my suggested wording, the owners of record shall provide a letter to the Conservation Commission acknowledging that he/she understands the wetland restrictions bound to this property. Upon the applicant's sale of this property, the property description in the deed to the new buyer shall contain a specific reference to this order conditions and its book and page reference. So, what I'm saying is, no matter who owns the property at the time the certificate of compliance is requested, whether it's, in this case, Glenda Point, the builder, or if it's somebody he just sold the house to a month ago, if they're applying for the certificate of compliance, you have to have something in writing from the owner or the buyer saying just what it says in this section, that they understand that it's subject to the restrictions, not a problem. And it says that when we sell that property, that it has to be something written right on the deed, referring to the recorded order condition and the book and page where that order condition is found. It's the best you can do as far as the registry of deeds goes. I mean, yes, that order is recorded, but when you draft the deed, it says Lot 1 on a plan on the easterly side of Linwood Street or whatever. But then I can add a paragraph saying this property is subject to the terms and restrictions contained in an order conditions recorded in book blank, page blank. It's just another level to give people notice if they're looking at their deed. Oh, what's this order? I don't know what more you can do, but I tend to do it out of practice because I don't want a buyer calling me 6 months later saying, he didn't tell me anything about it. I put it in my purchase and sale agreements, and I put it in my deeds. This one requires everyone to put it in the deed. Just a thought.
This came from Mac. This one, it bugs me a bit because, you know, it is very likely that not just this property, but all the properties will transfer. And, you know, we've all walked out to properties, and I have, that, you know, had orders of conditions on them and certificates of compliance, and somebody else bought it and didn't even know there was an order of conditions on it. So I think the intent of this was to try to make sure that future owners knew what was going on. You know, by putting it in the conditions, you know, you would expect a letter. It's just one of those things. I hear what you say, but I'm also, if Mac recommended it, it's probably legal. So I'm not in favor of letting this go unless we get some other method to do that. Because my concern...
I don't know the best way to do it.
I don't know. That's the best we have.
Frankly, you guys will never know when a piece of property gets sold. They don't have to, you don't know. So you'll never know.
How we could look it up.
Sure you can.
Yeah.
You're right.
Somebody reports it, or we just...
I'm trying to look at the reality of how do you enforce this and what do you expect to have happen? And it's in perpetuity, all right? So 50 years from now, you're expecting the next owner to, oh, geez, remember what that 63rd condition said I'm supposed to write a letter? It's probably not going to happen. So but the best time and the most effective time is initially when everything is growing and everything is new. You need to alert that first-time home buyer. See what those stakes are out there? That's the 20-foot no-touch zone. That's the replication area. Here's the order of conditions. Here's where it's recorded. I'm putting it right in your deed. You need to know this. That's going to be your most effective means of protecting the wetlands to get it up and growing. 10 years from now, it's going to be harder. I don't know what you can do. People don't even read the newspaper anymore, never mind reading their deeds.
I kind of agree with Kathy because this did come as a recommendation. MAC does have some attorneys that we can bounce questions off of. I mean, if they put it out there, it's there for a reason. And I understand your point, Mr. Riley, but I am hesitant on changing something that they're teaching to conservation commissioners.
Yeah, I'm surprised because
So they do have attorneys that we can ask questions to, so
Yeah.
maybe this is something we need to circle back on, and I'd be happy to reach out to them.
That seems like a good plan, actually, because I don't know, you know, if there's some other alternative or...
Yeah, I can call Michelle Gerard and,
Yeah, it's
you know,
just... It's just, I've been on the Conservation Commission a very long time on and off, and I've just seen some stuff over the years that, you know, when properties transfer, people just don't always know. And it's...
Right, and didn't Andrew say something when we walked 402? Didn't he say something about when properties transfer?
Oh, that was about another project.
Oh, all right, sorry. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all ears. I don't know of any way. You know, we had a similar situation in the plan where we were talking about we had a private road. How do you alert a future home buyer that this is a private road? Well, we put it on the street sign, we put it on their deed, we do as much as we can, but short of someone from the Conservation Commission going and stapling a copy of the order of conditions to the front door of the house once a year, I don't know what you do 10, 20 years from now, you know?
Or how about they sell the property after a year, they sell the property and they said, so we're talking about 3 years and we're still in this very kind of time zone for the replication and everything like that. So there has to be some method that we can say, okay, you did read this, right? And so this is one of those things. It's another piece of paper they have to sign, but we don't want to have to slap them with an enforcement order if we can avoid it.
And I think that's where,
that's
as part of or prior to the certificate of compliance, you've got your fingers still in this, and they have to comply with it, and that's where it's most effective, right? Because can't do it until you give us that letter. You got them there. Everyone's paying attention to it. 5, 6, 7 years later, when they sell the house, Conservation Commission doesn't know when people sell their houses, so you're not going to even know they forgot. You know, so I'm just saying, why are we putting it in there if there's no really effective way to enforce it, to check on it, and what's the penalty? What do you?
enforcement orders.
For what? Not giving us a letter?
No.
Everything could be growing and there's no wetland violation at all, but I didn't give you a letter.
The whole point would be like, okay, I know I'm not supposed to do this, I know what these markers are, et cetera, so that we don't have a neighbor contact us and say,
You're
hey,
talking- yeah.
this person just decided to plow into the wet, or, do something. And then we have to go out there and say, oh, guess what? You get to restore, and if you want to do anything, you have to come in. So it's just, I think talking to the lawyer to see like, because this was their recommendation to get around that whole issue of what happens.
I think that's where the
10
wetland
years
marker
ago.
becomes more effective.
Yeah.
That's a visual notice to people.
Right, but there's also things like you can't put, in terms of the driveway, for example, you can't put down certain things on the driveway.
Rock salt.
Then that's also part of the order of conditions that remains in perpetuity.
Right.
So,
Right.
so there's a lot of things in there that we do want homeowners
And I think we're trying to be proactive, like making sure that people, what I really want is people to know, whoever owns the house, to know that they have these conditions and to pay attention to them.
Right.
It's really not about.
I agree. I'm just trying
And I
to-
don't know how better to do it, because, we have had, hundreds of filings over the years, so,
Yeah.
how do you do it? But it is still something that, I think the regs are just gonna get tougher, and I prefer not to do enforcement orders. I prefer that just people follow the rules.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put
Sorry.
our heads together to figure out what's a better way.
And maybe there's a
This
better
is-
way, and maybe Mac will have some other suggestion of a different
I'm
way to
just
do
learning
it.
too, that I read this and I'm like, that's never gonna work. It's never gonna work. So if you're okay with that, go ahead, leave it in there, but it's never gonna work. Is there a better way to do it? I don't know. I made a suggestion, and if Attorney Gerard has a different one, that's great.
Well, and again, I see your point, and it's like,
Try to,
I will reach out to Michelle, she'll reach out to their attorneys, and they'll get back to us, I guess,
Yeah,
I can do that
And-
tomorrow
and-
morning.
sounds good, Gene.
my client's mad at me because I'm back here, because he wants the order conditions, because he needs to get started and stuff, but I'm like, you can't record that order, we need to get this resolved. So I'll do my best to try to turn this around and get it back to you.
Yep, great.
And then, where are we?
I think you're on just the corrections to the,
Okay, yeah, just some minor informational things on the WPA Form 5 itself.
I think that's Tony's stuff.
Yeah, I can work that out with Tony when the final, I guess it would be an amended order, right? Because the first one got submitted to DEP. It has not been recorded at the registry of deeds because it was not ready.
okay. And I agree with your stormwater check change, so
Yeah.
not a problem. Good.
So, thank you for your time and patience.
We gotta circle back to number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I don't even
Never
remember what it
finished that
was
one.
now.
Oh, geez.
Oh, the smart
conversation on the
statement.
other ones might help
I
us
have a
with this one.
suggestion. Since we're already going to talk, Jean's going to talk to an attorney, have them also bring this up.
Number 2.
Yeah, number 2. Bring number 2 up.
And again, my compromise to that is just make it a written statement. Don't make it a sworn statement
I'm
of the
fine with
Maine's
that.
penalty of perjury.
But let's find out
Yep.
from a different, like another lawyer, because they might have like strong feelings about that maybe they can convey. And-
Yeah, oh yeah,
I
give me
mean,
a
the Board
good
of
reason.
Selectmen are requiring us to take these courses, and they're supposed to be the ones that are educating conservation commissioners, and it was there in their recommendations. It would make me wonder why we would not have it, that's all. That's just me.
Yeah, I think talking to Mac is the
Yeah.
right answer, because the lawyer will probably have something to say.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you whether it's a suggestion or a
Right.
very strong recommendation.
Right.
Yeah, I
Once I
just-
get clarification.
I'm all with you. I just, I think we all hate redundancy and superfluous stuff. We want to be as efficient as possible and make it effective as possible.
Sure.
I'm with you. So-
Probably reach out to Andrew too. He might.
Oh, that's a good idea. He might have,
Stumbled across
or
this
he has
before.
attorneys that work, that he goes to.
Yeah, they have attorneys.
And
I'm
'cause-
sure it's not just our town that it happens in, where
No.
properties get sold and we don't know anything about it. and-
Yeah.
So who's gonna contact Andrew?
Oh,
Me, no.
Well, you're doing the whole like
Oh,
talking
I'll
to
do
the lawyer.
Mac, all right.
I don't think we should have redundancy. I think it would just make, because then you'll be able to give us the full,
So we'll make a motion,
Report.
Gene's gonna contact Mac and Andrew Point.
And then if there's any suggested wording, if it could, I guess, go to Tony, and then Tony can send it to me, but then you guys would have access to it too.
Yeah, Gene can
Well, I can just CC you in on the email to Mac and their
Yeah.
responses back if you
However,
want.
if you prefer, that'd be great.
Sure, it just eliminates another step of having to go through admin, so. I mean,
Yep.
I'll put her on it, but then you'll get it.
I'd put her on
direct.
it just because of public records law.
Right, but I'm just saying, all right. Okay.
So I guess then I'd be looking for a motion to issue an amended order of condition with the revisions that we have mentioned and agreed thus far, subject to number two wording to be resolved. And number two is that, what we just talked about, the perjury
Right,
thing.
and number,
And then the last one, was it the last one?
Number 9.
Yeah, how to handle future conveyances in perpetuity. Should we change the wording, eliminate the wording, or is there better wording? And if that motion carries, I will try to update the existing draft with the notes I took, and hopefully I remember all this. Well, I took notes.
You can always watch it again.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, thank you, Abington. I will, yeah, love to watch it again. I'll submit it for final review and we'll insert that language.
Somebody want to make that motion?
Oh, it's a long motion.
Huh?
It sounds like a really long motion.
Well, just say.
Say so
the
moved.
The motion that Sean stated.
Good, doctor.
What am I supposed to say?
Make a
Exactly.
motion to amend the order of conditions.
Well, go for it.
That's all I got. I will make a motion to amend the order of conditions to reflect the changes discussed here tonight, pending Gene or a Conservation Commission to be authorized conversation with Andrew and MACC regarding questions number 2 and question number 9.
Orders number
Order.
2.
Orders number 2 and number 9.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was
If I have to
2 and
amend
9 at the
something,
end. I don't know how you
something
differentiate.
9 in the additional, I believe.
Nine in the perpetuity
9 in the
ones.
perpetuity
Yeah.
section. Yeah.
But we all know what you're saying. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous.
Thanks for your time. Who's taking notes tonight for you guys?
Everybody.
she's gonna have to watch
Tony's
her,
gonna
right?
watch.
Sorry, Tony.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
Sean.
good night.
We appreciate you bringing all those things to light that are stuff to get to talk about.
You're welcome. I mean, like, look, I think we all know, there is never a perfect document, there's no perfect bylaw, there's no perfect contract. So,
We could try to get closer.
yeah, I mean, I think this was really healthy and informative to me. I think I hear what you guys are trying to do, and I think hopefully you heard what we're concerned about. But we all want to get our plans approved as quickly as possible, so we want to be as efficiently of the plans and as complete as we can, but then we also want to make sure we can get everything done and, inspected and approved correctly, so there's no delays. So to that end, we're just looking to be, all on the same page, and hopefully we get everything done as you wish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
All right, next up, enforcement or discussion restoration plan located at 0 Hancock Street with possible vote. That was just a typo that shouldn't have been put on there. They're not gonna come before us again until
Spring.
late winter, early spring to go over the other areas. I haven't heard any more complaints about people driving their bikes through there, so hopefully.
I saw tires back there yesterday.
Oh yeah, that's right, you live right there.
Yeah, I go back there all the time. I have can I discuss one thing there? I mean, I probably shouldn't, but I just have a question. Because they did the plantings, and
In one section.
the farthest section.
Yep.
So they did the plantings there. My only question is, that whole area, every tree there is dead. It's like a swamp. It floods all the time. We planted I think he's got some maples and some low shrubs there. I just question if those are gonna be able to live. Whereas the banks of that area, it's a low-lying area where they planted everything, but the banks to your immediate, as you walk up to it and then as you go past it, they're kind of bare. So I just wonder if you guys, I'm sure, can explain this part, but where we planted those, it seems like they might die, whereas we could have planted them a little bit further away, and they're just gonna sit in floodwater.
I mean, we probably won't know if they make it or not until springtime.
Agreed,
So we'll
right?
have to
Based on those
probably wait.
things.
There were plants there, but there were trees there before that lived for 50 years, 100 years.
But were there though? Because I walked back there before he did that, and there wasn't a lot of. I did see them cut down a couple of big pines, but the other areas where we planted the seedlings, all of those trees are just dead.
Well, he did hire a wetland
Yeah.
scientist, and she did the
This is just
soil
that, so you
analysis,
guys-
so, I mean, she stuck with, trees that are native in that soil, so I would assume that she knows what she's,
I mean, it looks great. I just wonder, because everything around it is dead, so I just wonder how those are
Maybe
gonna.
it's 'cause the leaves
I guess we'll
are
wait and see, obviously, but this is just from a
Yeah,
guy
I
who's
mean-
walking in the woods looking at it. It just.
Yeah, just keep in mind too that the types of plants that are planted there can handle long periods of standing water.
yeah.
And, they've been evolved to be able to handle that condition.
It just kind of follows through with the discussion we just had that,
I mean, it looks great.
they have, there's
But I just hope it
survivability
is.
that you have to deal with.
Exactly.
And we won't know until, I think she did the best she could at this point.
Right.
And, hopefully they'll survive and this spring we'll see something good.
Yeah,
That's all.
and that's what restoration and replication is all about, trying to put it back to what it was.
It'll be good for all of us to see it happen.
All right, next up is enforcement order discussion on possible protection act violations located at 833 Washington Street. Tony attached a email in the packets. The temple, they've hired an environmental engineer. They're in the process of filing an NOI and survey plan.
Okay.
So,
Do we think we could possibly have them cover the big giant piles of soil that they have sitting there? I mean, they've got those giant piles that are just sitting there, and they've been there since the enforcement order was issued.
you can add it to the enforcement order.
Kind of goes in line with what we just said to
Yeah.
Sean about the 7 days thing.
And once
What about that hole that's open?
Yeah.
We
that-
we have
We
no
can't, yeah.
jurisdiction over that. That's out of our hands.
Are we allowed to do or set up a sidewalk so we can see the existing conditions? Because we've only seen it really from the sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean,
just driving by on Washington Street, if you just kind of look, and there's this big hole and big piles.
two big piles.
Yeah, two big piles.
He also
Big
seemed like he
files.
just might not have been familiar with all of the rules, so I think if we were to tell him and add that, and
We
just
told them.
Well, I think we did.
about covering it, and they just
Well,
have
I
it.
think when they came in here, he said that they weren't gonna go forward with it.
No, he
I
didn't
also
say
don't
that.
think he
I
knew
know,
how
what
long
did
this
he
process is
say?
gonna
I
take.
don't remember
I think
what he said.
they said that later, but
Yeah.
that night he was gonna go talk to an environmental
Yeah.
engineer,
Yeah,
which
I
is
just
what
don't
we
think
told
he
him.
was familiar with how long this is gonna take, so he
No.
probably just didn't think to do that
Oh,
stuff, but
okay.
we should
I'm sorry.
probably
I
inform
misspoke.
him.
Yeah. So I think if we ask him to put, if we could add it to the enforcement order or just ask him to do it, I'm sure he probably
He
will.
seemed like he would be open
Yeah.
to it, so
Oh,
we
he
should
was very
definitely
nice,
try.
yeah.
I would just say, contact him, and then if he,
Yeah,
Maybe just have
if they
them-
don't want to cover up, then we can add it to the enforcement order.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
And
I just have Tony
That
maybe
seems
send him
reasonable.
reach out to him or
It's
something.
less paperwork if you
I'll
just-
shoot him an email tomorrow.
Great.
That's good.
Hey, Paul, can we skip to the NOI checklist before?
No.
No?
Because I didn't think it was on the agenda.
It
was
is.
posted yeah, the one posted outside. So I haven't really had a chance to look. If you guys want to talk about it,
Well,
Yeah, there are two agendas
I'm not
here.
going to vote on it, but you guys can.
okay, can we put it on the next agenda, please?
Yeah.
And, I
If
just
you guys
want,
want to discuss it, go ahead.
yeah, I was just, Lynn and I, cleaned up the checklist. We have Tony's, some of her changes we accepted, and we went through, both of us, and we may have reorganized stuff. I sent you, all of you, this week, a copy of what I consider the final checklist for the moment.
Right.
And with all our comments on it. I mean, there was a lot of editorial stuff in there. There was some issues from when it got typed over.
One comment I do have,
Yeah.
the color coding of all the boundaries, like the 100-foot buffer, 100-foot riverfront buffer, 200-foot riverfront buffer.
Sure.
I have a different color scheme for that.
One foot, yeah.
Well, just let us know.
Because having the 100 and 200 riverfront, the same color, it's kind of,
Yep.
it's easier if you have one a different color than the other.
Okay,
That
so we
makes
can just
sense.
put another
Yeah, no, I
color.
I'm gonna steal it from a project I'm working on.
Okay, yeah,
Good.
just send it to me and we
Yeah.
can, I can just
Yeah.
put it in. And my suggestion is that we accept it for 90 days, but at 60 days, we talk about it. I'd like us to go through a few, rounds of using it.
I think we already voted 2 months. We just
Yeah,
haven't
but
done it yet.
for me, I think if what I don't want to do is just like end up at the end of the 60 days and that's not.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. See how
Just do
it's,
90, but at 60, let's talk about
See how
where
it's
we're at.
working.
And, because I think if it's going to be more of a living document for a little while until we,
Yeah.
because there may be things that come up, either the wording or we may want to add stuff. It kind of depends, but let's see how it works. But I'd like to have it effective for 90 days because last time we didn't have enough notice of intents.
no, I've seen stuff come before us recently that looks like they've done a lot of the stuff that
Right.
is on the checklist,
And-
and it's made reviewing it,
A lot easier.
Yeah.
And I've used the checklist and, you've seen my comments, like it has helped, even though and I've been able to send them to the applicant before the meeting. So at least they're responding to them.
Yeah.
But I think it will be very helpful to have it posted and have people use it for a
and
little bit.
it gets them in and out of here quicker, instead of coming
Exactly.
Well, then we won't see them as often.
meeting after meeting,
Yeah.
continuing to another meeting, we get them in, we get them out, 1, maybe 2 meetings.
Yeah, you don't want to have somebody have to come back 3 or 4 times just because they're missing documentation.
Right.
So I think it will save us all time, but it will also save the applicants money. So we won't vote on it, but we'll talk about it next.
Anybody else have any comments on it, though? I mean,
I thought I really like what Tony did with the table. So instead of having each, check, I did this in purple.
That
I
was
really,
that was a very good
I thought that was really
suggestion.
good. So there were things that I had to move around, and if you actually look at the Word document, you'll see the comments I make, but also a lot of it looks like red. And it was actually, sometimes it was me making changes or bringing something back, and sometimes it was just copying and pasting what Tony had to move it to a different area, and so it wasn't like, just to make it clear, we didn't completely rewrite the whole thing.
No, I think, and
It's
I did a
just,
lot of editorial stuff,
Yeah.
mostly like the formatting and stuff, so you can see like, spacing or numbering was off, so just wanted to fix stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think there wasn't I don't think there was any big technical changes.
Not technical. I mean, there were things like re-adding in a description of what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
For each section.
And I think I renamed the checklist too. 'cause they're-
Technical requirement.
And we moved
checklist,
some
yeah.
stuff that would be on Tony's checklist away because there were things that
Onto yours.
it would take her too long to do. And it's much more appropriate for someone who is on the commission to do. So I moved all that off. So she basically has maybe 2 pages?
Yeah.
Front and back? 1 page front and back.
all
So
right.
easy for her.
Next up, recognition for Jean and Lynn for completion of the MACC Fundamental Certificate Training.
I should have brought you a cake. But congratulations.
Congratulations.
I just looked at all the classes, it's a big commitment, so.
How many hours was it? About 20?
It was like 2.5 hours per course times 8,
That's a lot.
so what is
20
that?
hours.
20. Right, 20.
20 years.
Some are longer and
20.
some are
Some
more
are
fun than the
longer.
others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some were longer than others,
3
yeah, that's for
hours,
sure.
yeah.
But it's actually, I highly encourage people to take it. You don't have to like take a test or anything like that. It's just listening to a lecture and asking questions, and some of them more like, they'll just talk and then they don't kind of check in that you're there, and others are like, okay, every like 10 minutes, tell me what you think about this, and it's clear that they're making certain you're actually present.
I think it would be helpful too, like the electives, if everybody knows what everybody else took, so we're not all taking the same ones.
That's true.
We can spread the wealth, so everybody's got their own sort of,
Yeah.
Though I will say, Lynn and I took the same class. It was just by accident, the Habitat remember, the wetland habitat, and the man who did the presentation, obviously, he was jumping in and using somebody else's graphics, and it was very difficult because we really didn't see anything that was useful to, at least I didn't see anything useful that I could take away from that class as a conservation commissioner, because he directed everything as the applicant, I don't want to hear about the applicant, I want to hear about conservation commissioner. You know, what can it do for us? How can we do this?
Yeah, that course.
He was all over the place. I mean,
But a
he
lot
just-
of the courses are really, really
Oh,
good.
yeah,
they are.
very,
That was
very
the
good.
only one
Sediment
that-
and erosion control, oh my God, the two men that put that on were fabulous. They were awesome. I never learned so much. I just sat there and we were almost 3 hours into the class. It was just awesome.
I went to the one years ago, How to Finish by Midnight.
Oh, yeah.
Before midnight.
Is that our lesson for tonight?
And
It's not
they
quite
gave
that
me
bad.
they had a pretend conservation commission meeting, and they gave me the pain in the neck conservation commissioner, and it was pretty funny because I got to sort of imitate some of the stuff I heard. But it can be, I think the courses are very good. I've taken a number of them in the past. I'm hoping that maybe they'll offer some stormwater. That's what I'd like to take myself. But there's some other, really good ones. I think Paul's point is that trying to, as we take courses, try to get some diversity as well, if we can, with the options. Because I think there's some really...
Andrew also puts
ones.
has the opportunity. I mean, he has offered so many classes to us, and I know I've attended almost all of his.
They're very good.
He's just very easy to talk to. I know, Tim, I learned a lot from him when we went on that
Oh,
walk.
yeah, he's great.
He's amazing, because he takes the time and explains to you, step by step, what it is that he's looking for and how we need to comply, and these are the regulations. I mean, it's just,
He's amazing.
he's a very good teacher.
The last time I
enjoys doing
talked
what
to
he's
him.
doing.
He really does.
Yeah,
enjoy
my
it.
God.
He really
Yeah.
does. So,
Last time I talked to him, first of all, he just wanted to say how happy he was with us as a
Yeah.
commission. And also, he is happy to come up anytime and do a training, do a site walk, whatever we need. So if we have a topic maybe that we want to have him give a discussion about, that sort of thing we can think about.
Well, maybe I might mention that when I call him.
Sure.
See if we can set something new up. Like, I think order of conditions, I mean, Mac is pretty good on that, and he actually held a Zoom meeting on order of conditions in January of this year. But maybe COCs and, things like that.
All right, cool. Next up, building permits and site visits. I haven't signed any permits, have you, Tim?
No, I haven't.
There's a
Site visits,
There's a site visit that Tony was trying to schedule.
we're gonna set up for next week, I guess, when she
But
gets back.
why are we going there? What does he want to do?
Well, Jean went yesterday to
I
look
did.
at the property.
I did. I went out to...
This is Walnut Street, right?
Yeah, we got a complaint yesterday morning
Oh.
from a resident.
185 Walnut Street. So I went there yesterday afternoon, and...
That's on the other side, right, of Walnut?
No, it's right by
Myers Ave.
Summer Street in Walnut. It's the second house in as you turn off Summer onto Walnut, heading towards the
Okay.
Myers Street Ave.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so I pulled in, I stopped, and I was probably about 10 feet from the drain that probably goes into Stream River, runs in there. So that's a perennial stream. And I saw a little bobcat, and I walked to the driveway because I saw some trucks parked there. So I asked for the homeowner. A young man came out and he introduced himself. He says, "My dad owns the property." And I said, "Well, I'm here because I'm investigating what's going on." And he said, "We're putting in a driveway." And I said, "Okay, well, you are aware there is a river." And he's like, "Well, it's on my property. I'm on my property at the stone wall." And I
No, didn't he
said,
say the river wasn't on his property?
the river is not on his property. He's working in his yard and he can pretty much do what he wants in his yard. And I'm like, well, when you're in a riverfront area, there is a 200-foot protection that you need to be aware of. So then his father came over and said that they wanted to put in a driveway, and it had already been filled with, I don't know what you call that. It looked like stone dust, but it wasn't. Maybe it was reprocessed asphalt, stone dust,
Just a
whatever.
mix of like millings or?
It
No,
was
it's that,
grayish
Yeah,
looking.
it's gray.
Dense
I
grade?
just use it at my house. It's that, no, it's crushed concrete.
Concrete.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
But he said every time he took his Bobcat out there, it was sinking. And I said, well, you're probably in a
Happens when you're driving into wetlands.
Well, anyway, so the plan is that he's going to put in a driveway, but he's not gonna blacktop it this year. But eventually, what he wants to do is put in 2 storage containers up by the street, by the stone wall, to store his blacktopping equipment in. And I said, you may wanna contact zoning and building, and definitely reach out to.
And after you left, he contacted Tony and,
Yeah, I said you need to
the
contact
ball rolling.
conservation, because you want to make sure that you're doing everything properly and you don't run into any issues. And the father was very nice. They were willing to do whatever. They're from the North Shore. So, I took pictures, I recapped what happened, and I sent it off to Tony and Paul.
all right, and then last week, Tim and I did a site walk over at, was it SS McHugh Circle? Is
Yes.
that what? the
I was
property is?
there too.
Yeah,
Oh,
Alex
Alex
was
was
there
there
too,
too, yeah, he didn't trip this
What's
time.
that McHugh Circle?
That was the one that's popped up before.
They came in for the extension
Yeah.
2 months ago, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're gonna start work. We did the pre-construction meeting out there, looked at the erosion control, tree clearing's been done,
Okay.
so. That's about it. They're gonna be coming before us, because we gave them a 6-month extension, so they're gonna come before us again.
Oh, we gave him 6 months? I thought we gave
Yeah.
him a year.
Nope, 6 months.
Oh, cool.
And they're gonna give us basically a schedule update when they come before us again for the next extension. And then, obviously, we went to 284 Oak Street.
Yep.
That's all, we already discussed that. Meeting minutes to approve, there are none in the packet. Correspondence, I haven't seen any either. So, do the order of conditions for Myers Ave. Remember this, I'm gonna close the meeting up. You guys have copies of these?
Jane does. You and Jane can,
Oh,
You
guys
want
can
it?
share. I already wrote down what I thought, so.
Anybody else want to use it? I'm just gonna write down what he yells out.
You gonna write it down?
Kathy knows them by heart, so.
Kathy.
She wrote them.
She didn't say no. All right. A1, well, all of A1 20 feet. B, I had B2 and B6. Anybody want to add anything to those? C, I had none. D, I had, for D1, I put down any rain event over 1/4 of an inch. Nothing for E, nothing for F. G, I had all of G, with G5, 100 feet. H, I had H2, H4, H5, H6, C, D, F, and G. I had I1, and I2, I had A, B, and C.
and they are digging up and restoring the wetland, correct? At the, there's zero change because they're gonna replicate. Was their plan in their notice of intent sufficient? I don't remember anymore. Do they have a plan, or do we need to add conditions for that replication? Because when they're putting utilities in, so it's not, what happened was, but they're just gonna replace them afterwards. It was a book, their filing was a book, wasn't it?
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
that,
don't think any of the utilities were in the wetlands, it was all just
what,
the,
because that's why I was very confused, but I'm pretty sure that, I didn't think to bring it with me.
I might have.
It doesn't look like you have it.
No.
They were gonna restore any areas that had been
Temporarily disturbed. I mean, basically, they're just gonna put it back to the way it was.
Yeah.
And planned, I assume, but, I just forgotten, it's been a while since I read it.
Yeah.
Do we just put a condition in that they're pretty good. Do we put a condition in that we expect them to follow the DEP guidelines, you know, the replication guidelines? Perhaps that's the way to deal with it. Just a general condition, a special condition that they'll follow the DEP guidelines rather than give them that whole list. Because I think it's a pretty simple restoration from what I could tell.
They're not trying to replicate.
And I think it was just a utility corridor. I don't think it was a lot of, so they should be able to use all the same
plants.
Same
in that
plants
area.
and the same, the soil they can just probably put to the side and put it back in.
Right. I think it's gonna be pretty simple.
Yeah.
Great.
any other special conditions? Nope.
That was a very well done notice of intent, by the way, in my.
Yeah, I know. I thought it
It's
was
probably the
great.
best one I've seen in a few years.
What's that?
Their notice of intent document was really well done.
All right, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve the order of conditions for SE 0840561. Anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve the order of conditions for SE 0840561, 200 Myers Avenue, 0 Walnut Street.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. So I want to make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.